We'll see how long this stays excellent quality. Um, I
I
th
hope.
I think we're in a better spot, but it could all go downhill real quickly. So we'll see. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Um, yeah. I can. I think I can. Um, yeah, we're just gonna delete the use. Yo, it seems to be working, eh? So, you know, we'll see how this goes for a second, right? So first and foremost, I gotta re-edit all my stream settings. It's crazy, bro. Crazy. All right, we're gonna do that. We're gonna do that. We're gonna do Saturday live reactions. Yay. Do I sound clear? Like, is it not buffering, all that? Kappa, you're like my what do you call it? You are my assistant in this mess, I think. So wow. Okay. Very clear? Wow. Yeah, it's crazy, bro. So I literally had to disable my Wi-Fi device. So I have Ethernet plugged into my computer. But my computer kept saying, "Oh, we're going to use your Wi-Fi, even though you have your Ethernet in." So I turned my Wi-Fi off, restart the stream, and while I'm streaming, it re-enabled the Wi-Fi. So I forgot all the Wi-Fi devices, every single one of them. Then it still did it. There's nothing for it to remember, for it to know, but it still found a Wi-Fi device. So I went into my device manager and I deleted it. I deleted everything. Not my device manager, but the Wi-Fi in my device manager. A lot of technical stuff there, but nevertheless, I think we are good. Probably spooked so many people off because this was supposed to start like an hour ago. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do, right? So I think we're good. I think we're good. So, as you know, this is Saturday live streams. This is going to be maybe something we do every Saturday. It just depends. Obviously, just depends. Um, depends how if this crashes and burns or whatnot. I also don't know, like, should I just create this entire stream front to back and then like go edit and like then upload the videos from the edit, or do I record separately each time that we're doing a real reaction and then use that record? I don't know. We'll figure that out. I'm scared I'm gonna break anything. Um, last thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to upload record. I don't know. We'll figure that out. I'm going to upload the different reactions we're going to be doing today, right? Reactions. So I'm doing this in the description live. I did all this literally before it started to screw up. So here we are, me doing it again. I have 6 reactions, 6 of them, 6 videos to react to. They're very much diverse in content. I selected 1 out of the 6 just for fun, and then I have some examples from you guys. So I just updated the description, so hopefully it'll update for you guys. Probably won't do that in real time though. So we're gonna start. We're gonna share my screen. Oh, yeah. We're gonna start with this video right here. I'm gonna go through them real quick so you know. So, and if anyone's watching, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna start with: could you survive as a soldier in Napoleon's army, the Grand Army, by Survive History? Then we're gonna do the murder of Walther Rathenau, political violence in the Weimar Republic. Let's go. Then we're gonna do the American Civil War, Battle of Eltham's Landing, flanking Joe Johnston. Then we're gonna do every time the United States overthrew a foreign government by Mr. Beat. Then we're gonna do the rise of Macron, how a political outsider shook France in 2017. Then we're gonna do the world's most annoying road by Jay and Mark, previously known as Jay Foreman. Now, these are 6 reactions. They vary, like I say, in content. They vary in length. They vary in, I don't know, pretty much everything. So as I said, this is where we're going to start with. We're going to start with this one. Could you survive as a soldier in Napoleon's army? So without further ado, let's jump into it. Like I said, I'm going to see if I can. I'm scared though if I press start record. Anyway, we're just going to, you know what? We're just going to do this all in one cut. Let me check one more time. Let me check how the stream looks. I know I'm so. Let me check how the stream looks on my side. That way I can determine if I need to record separately. Let me see. The stream looks. I know I'm so. We do. I'm gonna do the murder. I think we're fine. I don't know. Hard to tell. You know, YOLO. Okay, let's jump into it. We're going to do the intro, and we're going to go. All right. Welcome back, everyone. Hope you're doing well. We are going to do, could you survive as a soldier in Napoleon's army? This one's been recommended for quite a while, I think. This is Survive History. Napoleon, obviously, the French general. Little Corporal has created an army, the Grand Army, and we have a video on how can you survive. Now, this is going to be interesting because this is going to talk about, you know, what part of his army, like when he was in his Italian campaigns, when he was fighting in Austerlitz, was he? What about when he went to freaking Russia? That was pretty difficult. So how are you going to survive there? So we'll have to see. Let's jump right in and see how it goes.
If you were growing up in France in the late 18th century, there's a good chance you, or someone you knew, would end up serving in the army. Under Napoleon's leadership, the whole of French society was galvanised by a constant need for victory on the battlefield. It was either that or the country might fall.
Yeah, it definitely would fall. I mean, they obviously continuously had coalitions against them, front to back, ever since the threat of monarchies being deposed in the French Revolution. So,
France was surrounded by powerful enemies who wanted to destroy the Republic, and they decided the best form of defense was attack.
En avant, marche!
so similar to like how we've seen other videos, this is going to be a reenactment, mainly, but maybe some history dabbled between that.
Out of France's struggle for survival was born one of the greatest fighting forces ever assembled. Napoleon's Grande Armée was established in 1804 from a force originally gathered for an invasion of Britain.
Oh, yeah. I think that's when they were trying to co-op with France. Obviously, France was going, I mean, I don't know if this is before or after the Peninsular War, but an invasion of Britain, think about how insane that would be. I don't know, since the Romans have anyone tried to do that. I mean, obviously the Spanish Armada and maybe some other French incursions that I just cannot remember, but what kind of force would you need? You would have to have some sort of deterrent to that naval superiority which the British had. So
In the end, it never crossed the English Channel, and instead went on to inflict crushing
so many political cartoons from this era.
defeats on the major powers of Europe in battles like Austerlitz and Borodino. But look at paintings from the period, history books written in the intervening centuries, and very recent Hollywood movies, and you'd believe its success
Yeah, really great movies right there.
was all down to Napoleon and his tactical genius. What about the men who did the actual fighting?
Without them, Napoleon was nothing.
What challenges did they face? Although few common soldiers left detailed accounts, we can piece together evidence from a range of contemporary sources to reconstruct their daily experience. In this episode, we're going to step into the boots of those ordinary men who lived and died serving Napoleon's grand ambitions.
If you get a bullet in the leg, an arm, you're gonna fall down.
Yeah, we've obviously done some really good history hit videos on the medieval and then post-medieval medicine. I mean, this is post-medieval, obviously, this is more modern, but can you imagine how life could change so quickly just by getting struck in the hand, even in the foot, even. It's ever changing.
Those
Warfare.
injuries, they often end up as mortalities.
I've been drafted into the 21e de Ligne, a living history group representing a real unit in Napoleon's army, using meticulous research to sort fact from fiction and bring the early 19th century to life.
Oh, they got horsies out too. Oh, that horsey fell.
I'll be finding out how dangerous life really was for these men, and how likely it was that you'd make it out alive.
Yeah, I mean, it just depends. There's a lot of luck. There's, at the end of the day, obviously, there's a lot of luck involved in your mortality in the Grande Armée. Depends on who you're fighting. I guess it also depends where you're at. Is it the environment that's going to do you over? Is it an infection from something small that does not feel like a mortal wound? Or is it the inevitable? Is it a cannonball or a musket ball that goes right through you? All right, that was the intro.
The French army needed lots of soldiers at the turn of the 19th century. The Revolution of 1789, which culminated in the bloody end of the French King Louis XVI, did not go down well with the royal families of Europe.
No. They were threatened by this, and they were looking at France as something that could spread the fervor of revolution. Not like France was just going to go and just overthrow all their monarchs for them, but they were basically trying to show a wave of force. And especially when you look at places like Austria, Russia, Spain, Germany, Britain, all these monarchs that just don't like what's going on in Paris.
And the French soon found themselves at war with Britain, Austria, Prussia, and Russia.
Basically every single nation I just mentioned.
When the ambitious Napoleon Bonaparte became supreme leader of France, the number of enemies only grew.
Yeah, they didn't like him that much.
The Corsican upstart was threatening to conquer the whole of Europe, forging an empire which encompassed much of modern Spain, Italy, Germany, and Poland.
I sometimes think about, like, what if Corsica was not, like, French territory whenever Napoleon was born? What if anything changed?
But despite the constant need for fresh troops over these years, they didn't let just anyone in. Soldiers had to meet a standard set of requirements. Let's see if I'm up to scratch.
I'm very interested in these requirements, if they're physical, if they're genetic, if they're mental, or are they classes? Because, you know, even like we look at the Romans, like you have to be a certain class to enter up until like the Marian Reform. So I'm wondering on this.
Hello guys, I've turned up for my first day in the French infantry. I assume I have to pass some tests to actually get in, right? What kind of entry requirements are there?
So in terms of entry requirements, you have to be a man mostly between 20 and 25 years old. If you're a conscript, if you're a volunteer, you could actually
So
conscript
20 to 25 years old. Interesting.
from the age of 16 after 1806 or so.
Yeah, I mean, look, they were desperate at that point.
But you had to have permission of a parent or a tutor. Your height would not be a barrier to your entry. It just decide where you would go. So your height, you're quite tall. You probably actually end up in the Grenadiers.
Yeah, I was about to say the Grenadiers is that huge piece of people who they are formidable when you look at them, and especially with those hats on top of them, makes them even taller. 6'6" or taller.
The average height of the day was about 5'6", 5'7". So if you were around that height, you would be in the Fusiliers, which what we are. And then if you were any shorter than that, you're probably in the Voltigeurs, which are the skirmishers of the French infantry.
Very interesting. That's also, I would say, tactical. You know, the taller you are, the more real estate you take up in the field. So the more likely you're going to get shot.
In terms of any medical issues, you would have to have a sort of quick inspection by the surgeon of the regiment.
So
long
like
as
we
you've
do
got
today.
all your fingers, because you need all your fingers.
Got them.
In order to, especially these two are the most important, because
okay,
one is
yeah.
a trigger finger
Firing,
and you
yeah.
need them to bite to cartridges. And that leads us to another requirement. You need to have, especially this side of your face, you need these teeth.
That's something you don't think about, like the cartridges that you're able to utilize into the weapon.
So if
Okay,
you,
that's to
because
bite off the
biting the
paper, okay,
cartridges, yeah. So if you were of conscription age and you didn't want to be conscripted into the army, you did have a lot of cases where they would physically maim themselves to avoid the draft.
Yes, that is true, and probably so often than not, you see people avoiding the draft for, you know, whether it be they don't support the war, they don't want to go, they're scared, there's so many reasons, right? Draft dodgers is what we call them in the United States, but wow, I can't imagine the toils that you would have to go through to avoid the toils of war.
Another thing, you're not married, are you?
I'm afraid so,
Oh,
yeah.
well, you can't be in the army. You can't.
Wow, that's actually quite honorable, I would say. I wouldn't think that. I actually would not think that.
Okay.
You can't be in. Yeah, you can't be in the army if you're married at this time.
Wow,
That's interesting. Why?
didn't know that.
There's a psychology of you've got something to desert to.
I see.
I'm sure some of these might lift right after a couple of the years go by.
Yeah.
Desertion in the French army is always a problem, right from the start of the Revolutionary Wars right through to the end of the Napoleonic Wars.
Perhaps one reason so many soldiers ran for it was because they'd been forcibly dragged into the army as conscripts. At least once a year, French men between 20 and 25 drew lots to see if they'd be packed off to war.
Just like a draft.
detailed physical descriptions of new recruits were taken to aid the gendarmerie in hunting down runaways. Soldiers who deserted might face a punishment known as the bullet, where they were chained to a cannonball and required to carry out hard labour. In the most serious cases, you might be condemned to death by firing squad, or, as it was sometimes known, having your hair washed with lead.
Not fun.
We talked a little bit about conscription. If I'm conscripted into the army as opposed to coming in as a volunteer, are you treated slightly differently?
The only way you're treated slightly differently is that if you're a volunteer, you do get an extra franc's worth of pay each month, and that lasts until the first 4 years of your service.
Wow.
You're able to choose the regiment you join as well, aren't you, as a volunteer? I think if you're conscripted, you just get sent wherever you're sent.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So volunteering, you're joining whichever arm you're volunteering for. Whereas,
Well, that's at least convenient. So if you don't want to be told what to do, you put it on yourself to tell them where you want to go.
conscription, you're
better.
Unless you can ride a horse, you will probably be conscripted into the infantry.
Oh, that's another prerequisite if you want to be in part of the cavalry.
And that will be, depending on where you live, you'll be conscripted into a certain regiment and be sent to their depot. Now, for example, our guys recruited from modern-day Belgium and the Netherlands, they would be sent to the regiment's depot, which was in Jülich, as it's called today. Back then it was called Juliers. It's a German town today.
Okay.
That was the depot of the regiment until 1814, when it got taken over by the Allies.
Got it. So you get there, and presumably that's the point at which you get given your uniform.
And did you have to buy your uniform, or was it part of being in the army?
The idea that French soldiers were always as well turned out as contemporary artworks suggest is a bit of a myth. As well as shortages during wartime, there was plenty of corruption among military suppliers and contractors. One French regiment recorded receiving a shipment of boots with cardboard soles.
Ali.
And even when smart parade dress was available, it might not have suited everyone.
Pour cet uniforme, un homme doit être bien bâti, bien fait. A man of 20 is not yet formed. Nay, we were joined by conscripts who were under 19. These accoutrements gave them an absolutely silly look.
The stereotype of the
Interesting. So yeah, like you said, like people, they're gonna start to lower that age. The age of 20 is just like I guess a guideline, but they're gonna start lowering that age, especially when people are needed, because hey, guess what? We're not just being attacked by 2 countries, we're being attacked by 5.
French Napoleonic soldier is the blue uniform, the shako which you're wearing with the bright, shiny brass plate. Didn't necessarily reflect reality for the vast majority of the time.
It's a really nice uniform, though. I will say that.
These are expensive. These cost a lot of money to make. Soldiers,
The dyes.
if you're wearing it every day, day in, day out,
Oh yeah, the dyes.
they're expensive.
And think about all the metal that are part, like the buttons, the belts, the everything.
to replace. With that in mind, your greatcoat would be what you would wear the vast majority of the time. You'd wear these on parade, you'd wear these on special occasions, and generally on battles, yes, you would wear these, but not necessarily all the time. Inclement weather, rain, cold, actually sometimes if it's incredibly hot,
I don't see a lot of them with gloves, you know?
the greatcoat
When did gloves become part of it? Or is that just not meant for everyone?
can actually help keep the heat off you, because you actually wear another smaller jacket underneath the habit long.
Maintenance of whatever uniform they received was also a constant headache for soldiers. There was a lot to keep clean.
There is 33 individual brass buttons on this, every single one of which needs to be polished. On this, there is another 12 individual, very nice, bright, shiny brass buttons.
And think about every single battle, every single skirmish, this is going to... I mean, the mud, the blood, like sweat, and anything and everything to get it dirty can happen quickly.
Again, all of which need to be polished.
Yep.
The shako that you're wearing under that nice cover, there's a nice briny brass shako plate. Again, all of which needs to be polished to a wonderful, nice shine.
The belts as well need to
Yeah,
be polished.
belts need to be whitened.
And underneath the cover here, you've got your black lid for your jabern, your cartridge box.
Yeah.
That needs to be, polished as well. Your shoes polished. So, and the soldiers would do it.
One thing I find fascinating about
I wonder how much that mattered when you were, I don't know, trekking on from battle to battle, or is this more like at camp?
these uniforms, these soldiers not much consideration was given to sort of gymnastic exercise, was it? These uniforms were designed to be restrictive because soldiers were meant to stand still. That was the kind of ideal at the time.
Yeah, warfare was very different in 1804 than 1914. And that's obviously why World War I was such a disaster for so many people, because the evolution of fire rate, the evolution of technology made this type of warfare pretty obsolete. And I guess the lines, the volley fire, there's so many reasons for doing it this way, but it's quite old-fashioned once the 19th century progresses into the later part of the 19th century.
When we're talking about the style of warfare, it was very much line formations. In terms of any exercise, there was dancing and saber practice. That was the exercise that you generally did. In the French army, you're marching a lot.
Yes.
So
what was it, 30 kilometers a day they were expected to march?
On average.
I mean, you think about the Romans, did they do similar numbers like that?
Yeah, during the quickest campaigns, like the Austerlitz campaign, I think Davout's corps marched something like that, 30 kilometers a day.
Obviously, the art of war of Caesar and so forth was studied by Napoleon, as well as Frederick, as well as Alexander.
Half of his corps didn't make it to the battle because they were exhausted, but some of them did, and helped turn the tide of the Battle of Austerlitz.
The combined weight of kit and weapons carried by regular fusiliers was around 25 kilograms, and even more for grenadiers. It was also expected that soldiers would wear their haversacks into battle. Little wonder then that any items considered unnecessary to survival were often left on the side of the road.
So much personal possessions that you just can't bring, and you're a new man in the army. Your individuality does not matter usually. Is that a gourd?
A French soldier had to carry pretty much his entire life in his pack, and one of the packs looked like these. This one weighs about 11 kilos. He's got his greatcoat on the back there, and in that would be all of these items. So you'd have your parade dress, spare pair of breeches, a nice pair of gaiters there. You'd have a spare pair of boots, hobnailed boots, plus all of the equipment that you needed.
Oh, you got like cleats, or what do you call it? Well, they look like cleats, how they have those little nubs, spikes. I didn't know that they had that. I mean, I guess that makes sense, especially with the terrain they'll be trekking through.
Clean them because soldiers need to polish their boots. A couple of linen shirts. These ones are quite rough, pretty uncomfortable. A summer linen waistcoat. Bit more comfortable, keeps you cool. That can go under your jacket. And then a lot of equipment here, which was for basically keeping yourself and your gear clean. So things like this. This is not a whip.
It's not a whip?
For torturing people. This is for beating your clothes to get the dust.
Well, you learned something new.
And the clay pipe powder, because the same clay that was used to make these pipes was used to clean the jackets. So this was used to beat it out. You'd have other things, so soldiers would carry all of their money with them. But once they were paid, they had to pay for their own repairs. So all of this kit was technically owned by the emperor, not by the soldier themselves. If they did have any spare money left over, well, it might go on these. Now,
Playing cards for gambling?
you might see with this pack of cards, it's got a king on the front. From 1792, packs of cards like these were actually banned because the French Revolution obviously
Because they didn't want to see the monarchy.
got rid of the monarchy.
Yeah.
But by the Napoleonic period, they were back in fashion. Napoleon himself was obviously an emperor. Many of his marshals were kings across Europe. So that was fine again.
That makes sense.
And then otherwise, you've got things for personal care. So you've got a little mirror, a little comb for getting rid of bugs.
I'm sure a razor has that. You got to be able to shave.
Soldiers were pretty much eternally affected by lice. They might have carried a toothbrush. We know Napoleon brushed his teeth. Not sure if French soldiers did. They might have used a twig or something like that. A little knife, many uses. And everything else here
Do they use a knife to shave, or do they have a razor?
is for cleaning weapons and equipment. So a little bit of steel wool here for cleaning and polishing weapons. All of this stuff.
It's crazy to think about all our luxuries that we have today and then look at what they're having to use in the 19th century.
Here, because soldiers had a lot of time to kill and they needed to keep everything clean.
With their uniforms
It's also a sense of pride, you know, to keep your uniform clean.
issued and bags packed, infantry recruits were subjected to at least 3 months of intensive drill training. They were taught the basics of marching in step, how to move as part of a larger unit, and crucially, how to load and fire their musket.
Les officiers nous permettaient pratiquement aucun répit. Nous avons dû répéter 100 fois les positions garde à vous et repos. We had to learn the march step, 2 feet in length from one heel to the other, 76 paces per minute. That's what the sergeant kept yelling at us.
76 paces per minute. Wow. So is one step a pace? That's fast walking.
Hey guys, I'm going to be late for training, but just a quick request to subscribe to the channel.
Just go subscribe to Survive History. I think this is our first video ever doing Survive History.
Leave us a comment, hit that notification bell. I'll see you in a bit.
Yeah.
All right, Matt, we're here for some musket training. The weather's not doing what we want it to, but you're protecting your musket right now according to the French drill regulations, right?
Yeah, so this is a maneuver which is called arme sous le bras gauche. So this would be done when it starts to rain.
So water doesn't go down the barrel, obviously.
The objective is to keep the lock protected, which is protected underneath my left arm
Ooh, that too.
pit, and also to make sure that no water gets down the barrel. Inclement weather can cause a tremendous amount of misfires.
Yeah.
That's such a small detail that matters so
And
much.
Reliable.
A lot less reliable, and the more muskets that are less effective, the less effective the volleys of the battalion.
So I guess commanders probably wouldn't be keen to fight in this kind of weather.
No, if they had to, then they would have their soldiers holding their muskets like this as much as possible.
Okay, well, let's go through the loading process. Is it fair to say that the French musketry didn't have a great reputation, but the French musket did? They thought it was the best in Europe at the time.
So the French musket, the French infantry musket, as we typically call it,
Charleville.
colloquially it's called a Charleville, but this is a bit of a sort of Americanism because they got shipped so much of them in the American War of Independence. This musket is, there's a reason it was copied by so many, because, I mean, for a start, the bands which hold the barrel to the stock are very easy to take off, so it's very easy to take off for cleaning and maintenance. It's also a very sleek design. The Brown Bess was more about quantity rather than quality.
Okay, so mass production, like easy to mass produce these is what he's saying. That's very handy when you have thousands and thousands of conscripts.
Well-drilled British soldiers using the Brown Bess were capable of firing 3 rounds a minute. But the French weren't far behind.
So to start the loading process, I'm going to be at shoulder arms, or porte-armes in the French army. The first order is charger douze-tombe, charger arme. So I bring the musket here. The lock is just below my breast level, my nipple level, and my thumb is ready to open the frizzen. The order comes, ouvrez le bassinnet. I bring my hand behind the stock down to my cartridge box and open up my cartridge box and grab hold of a cartridge. Then the order comes, déchirez cartouche. That's when you bite and spit off the paper. Amorce, this is the only time you look down and pour just enough powder.
So that's the gunpowder. So the cartridge box gunpowder, you pour it, okay.
Into the pan. Fermez le bassinnet.
Oh, is it?
Then you bring your arm down here L'arme à gauche. Cartouche dans le canon. And pouring the powder all the way in. The ball in real life would have gone down at this point as well.
Yep.
Tire la baguette. Now the baguette is literally...
So does the cartridge paper go down with it?
Yes, baguette, yeah. Because the word baguette is French for stick. Bourré.
Ah, that makes sense. Yeah, stick bread.
All you need is about 2 taps. You don't need any of this.
Yeah.
Just 2 quick taps so you can hear it go home. Remettez la baguette.
Fix.
And then the final order. Feu.
So that's a blank, obviously, because there's no musket ball in there. But okay.
Having seen the expert do it, now it was my turn to take a shot.
A blank
At least
shot.
I didn't have to aim at anything.
Arm. So bring this arm and there, twist the gun towards you, and then bring it around. Bring them there. That's right. That's right. Yep. Then cock it.
I wasn't supposed to look, was I?
Not really.
Okay.
Jus. That's right. Feu.
So he didn't have to do all the like the what do you call it, the loading and so forth, but still works.
Quite a blast in your face, isn't it?
Yeah.
Think about that, like times 100, all that smoke carrying across the battlefield.
So I once read, Matt, that for every 500 balls roughly that were fired in a Napoleonic battle, perhaps only one would be a fatal shot. Is that
Wait, what?
that were fired in a... So I once read, Matt, that for every 500 balls roughly that were fired in a Napoleonic battle, perhaps only one would be
No.
a fatal shot. Is that true?
It's probably not far off the mark in terms of killed, but if you get a bullet in the leg, an arm, some part of the body,
Those can still become infected, right?
you're going to fall down. You're going to be what we call hors de combat. You're going to be out of action, essentially. And, the fatalities compared to the injuries that you see in the Napoleonic period, there's far more battlefield injuries than mortalities. But, of course, when you get those injuries, they often end up as mortalities through infection,
Gangrene.
disease, wounds getting infected, and people not surviving amputation, which was the most common sort of... if they couldn't get the ball out safely and extract
Yeah, they couldn't probe it out. Ugh.
it, then you were going to lose a limb, which was very common.
Although a single musket ball could undoubtedly be lethal, commanders knew their best chance of victory was to confront the enemy with as much firepower as possible. Under Napoleon, this led to some quirky innovations in the drill manual, as different methods of formation firing were tested in battle.
Okay. Like
Okay,
what?
so James, fine body of infantry you've got here. You're about to go through, I guess it's a fairly unique tactic that the French would use, firing in 2 ranks, the 3rd rank passing the musket forward.
Yeah.
Why did they use this tactic particularly?
They use this tactic to put shock into the enemy. So basically, what would happen is the first 2 ranks would be firing, while the 3rd rank was loading and passing
It keeps them going that way. Yeah, good mobilization.
a loaded musket to the man in the 2nd rank. So you got like a little
Assembly line.
I could say like a machine gun going down the
Right, okay.
ranks. So if you think about 100 or so men in that front and 2nd line, you'd be like, doof, doof, doof.
That's not like new either. In the what was it? Was it the 30 Years' War? We saw a lot of that start to pick up as well. I don't know if it was what was his name? The Swedish general. I can't remember his name, but the Swedish general. I think he may have. I don't want to say started that, but started to revolutionize that. Yeah.
So it's essentially not letting up, if there's
It's not letting
cavalry
up.
coming in, there's no gaps in your fire for them to
Yeah.
sort of exploit that kind of thing.
We believe that Marshal Desai used it at Marengo when he turned up to the battle late. The battle was already lost. Napoleon had lost the battle. Marshal Desai turned up and they used feu de Duronc, which absolutely broke the Austrian lines
Right,
and won the
okay.
battle.
The morale must have been just insane for the Austrians to be at that point of the battle and then have that happen to them. That might have, yeah, that crushed their morale.
Okay, so quite effective then.
Very
So
effective.
not as fun for the guys in the third rank who are just loading and passing forward, but never mind. Right, we're going to let you guys show us exactly how this is done, so take it away.
Feu de Durand, peloton, arme, commence le feu.
Firing in 2 ranks allowed all the muskets in a platoon to be used with.
So the fire rate is much more, I mean, the velocity to fire rate, I mean, it's there. This is to combat the British 3 every 60 seconds. So I don't know, what would be the fire rate on this, like in terms of how many times that one could fire? Probably like 4 or 5 times every 60 seconds or something like that.
Without the front rank having to kneel down, which was thought to slow down forward momentum. The French had experimented with all 3 ranks firing at once, but there was a real risk the men at the
I mean, hearing loss has got to be a thing too, right?
front would be shot in the back of the head, which was far from ideal.
Peloton, roulement.
That was great, James. So our enemy infantry are scared witless now.
I wonder, like, does height matter at all in this formation?
From the feu de Durand.
I would think the shorter people would be up front.
What happens now if they decide to get a little bit cocky, they're coming in for a charge? How do you react to that?
So basically what you do is when you got to very close quarters to the infantry, you'd give the order to croiser le bayonet, which is basically 1-2 manoeuvres at eye level. And as you got close to the enemy, you are, in the drill book of the French 1791, you can fire from the hip.
Okay.
The musket is always loaded. There's no ifs. The musket has always been loaded, so you can fire straight into your enemy. Usually the enemy would have ran by then.
Yeah.
One of them would have broke. There
Yeah, there's a point of no return.
was very, very little hand-to-hand combat in Napoleon. It was, because who'd want to get stuck with that?
Suicidal, right? And I can imagine
It's kind of like horses not wanting to charge into an enemy line, and except for you're a human, you also don't want to do that.
you're not going for accuracy there. It's the sort of the last moment possible to
Yeah.
take that shot, just to essentially break that charge up.
Firing from the hip was also a dangerous business.
Hip fire.
If troops were packed closely together, there was a real risk your musket could ignite your neighbour's cartridge box.
Oh.
Again, not ideal.
Now I'm able to let the front rank show you how you would fire from the hip, if that suits.
Let's do it, James. Let's
Okay,
see what would
brilliant.
happen if you've got some Austrian infantry coming straight at you.
Croiser le bayonet. Commence le feu.
Doesn't seem that formidable, but I'm looking through a camera. This is a reenactment. There is no, it probably was a lot more when you were there.
Once training was complete, French troops would soon get used to the hardships of army life. Young conscripts were almost inevitably subjected to a gauntlet of initiation ceremonies, hazings, and general mockery by older soldiers.
Nothing's changed. Hopefully some things have changed.
Newcomers were also expected to grease the pot, which meant buying their comrades meals and drinks.
Je suis fatigué surtout de voir les pauvres conscrits tourmentés, volés et humiliés. You cannot imagine how bleak was the fate of those unfortunate children at that time. If I recounted everything they had to bear in the way of thefts and sufferings, people would believe it an exaggeration.
Wow. I mean, you're going to get taken advantage of if you're vulnerable.
We also gained some insight into the experience of French troops from the colloquial language they used.
So, like, the language they used, like, their army to their army friends.
We find with many periods of history, the Napoleonic Wars give us some great and memorable slang phrases, and I've got a few in here. So the first few describe older, experienced soldiers or veterans. So one I've got here is dur a cuire, which means hard to cook. Something like tough as old boots, tough guys basically. Also a vieil moustache, an old moustache, because only certain ranks and men of experience were allowed to wear one.
Oh, that's interesting. Like, I know his bodyguard, like, famously, notoriously had those huge mustaches. Grenadiers we saw had those, so I'm wondering.
They also apparently referred to the Imperial Guardsmen, the elite troops, as les immortels, harking back to the classical world once again, and the
Like the immortals of, like, Persia.
bodyguard of the Persian kings. The regimental eagle, obviously one per regiment, that was the thing that everyone had to rally
So
around,
important.
was affectionately called l'oiseau, the bird, or le cuckoo. There were some great nicknames for enemy infantry, and I'm pretty sure you can work out which nations are being referred to here. So you've got les Godins, or les Kaiserlics, that's the British and the Austrians. And some of the terms give us an insight into more mundane aspects of soldierly life. So
What's going on, Max?
things like the word they used for beef meant something like hardwood. The term for fleas was la mie de pain, or breadcrumbs, and that just gives us an idea of how common it was for
Breadcrumbs? Golly. That's kind of weird, man.
soldiers wearing coats like these to be covered in fleas and lice, basically. There were also numerous ways that they described being hungry, and in fact, despite Napoleon spending a lot more money on keeping his troops nourished than his predecessors, starvation was still a massive problem in his army, particularly on campaign. There were also some inventive names for other groups within the French army. So
It's funny. It's funny listening to these different names because this is stuff that's not covered ever in history. What's going on, Swedish historian? Now, I'm glad he's got the translations, because otherwise I would have been totally lost.
the well-heeled cavalrymen, the cuirassiers, were called gilets de verre, so steel vests. I'm sure they were called ruder things as well. French artillery was affectionately called le flûte à grosse bec, the big-mouthed flute.
Although regular infantry weren't trained to use cannons, they were well aware of the damage they could do. Napoleon
Yeah, I mean, think about it. A cannon can upset your entire line just because, one, duh, and then two, the psychology of the warfare that you're portraying. Especially, think about, like, I think about what on Waterloo, when you have the massive line of cannon and artillery, which of course Napoleon was most famous for because he's an artillery commander before this. Just the formidable amount of mental warfare that artillery does to an enemy line, especially closer they get. By the way, Max, I have a select list of videos that we have we're reacting to today. Is in the description of this live. And by the way, if you're watching this after the fact, yes, we do these live streams every Saturday now. Well, at least for now. We'll see how this goes. But anyway, if you're watching this later on YouTube, how you doing? We did this on a live.
himself was a master of artillery, having learned his trade at the École Militaire in Paris. He was also pretty ruthless. At the Battle of Austerlitz, he ordered his cannons to smash a frozen lake as it was being crossed by the retreating Russian army.
Right, and I mean, that's portrayed kind of fun. Almost like in the Napoleon movie by Ridley Scott. Very much a movie with a lot of critical opinions on it. I don't think it... I think it could have done more, but it's meant for more of a mainstream audience, so it's meant for more theatrical... a dramatic and theatrical showcasing. But is that interesting? I don't know how much the frozen lake, hitting the frozen lake with cannonballs really did I don't know how much damage it really did, especially if you watch the movie. It just obliterated the Austrians. But I don't know.
Condemning those on the ice to a watery grave. There is, however, absolutely no evidence that he turned his guns on the pyramids.
Yeah, he says that because of the Ridley Scott movie.
Can we talk a little bit about the loading process? How do you go about
Look at that little small cannon.
loading a cannon like this? This one's a little bit smaller than perhaps there would have been on the battlefield.
This one's actually a 2-pounder. The
Interesting.
French, at the beginning of the war, their smallest was a 4-pounder.
So this wasn't even like, I get, this is obviously a reenactment, so they're not going to use probably the same material. So the smallest they had is a 4-pounder. I'm guessing they had a 10-pounder or a 20-pounder.
The French tended to have more 6s and 9s.
Okay.
And later on they went on to the 12s and 24s.
Okay, so that's how we're going. We're going in that. So 6, 9, 12, and 24. I'm guessing the 24s were the massive ones.
The British tended to have slightly smaller. Obviously, they've got to travel with them even further.
A well-trained French artillery crew would be able to fire around 2 or 3 rounds per minute, lobbing iron
Similar to like the British with their musket fire.
into enemy ranks at anything up to 1.5 kilometres.
So first off, what he's doing, he's taking any remnants of an old cartridge that may still be in there. And as you can see, that's like a giant corkscrew. Then to make sure there's no burning embers, because the last thing you want to do is put another charge inside when you've got a burning ember in. Okay, so that's made that all clear.
So that's quite similar to what you might do with a smoothbore musket at this point, right? You have to clear, clear out the barrel to make sure there's no fouling inside.
That's correct. It is exactly the same, just on a bigger scale, really.
And like I said, this is a 2-pounder, so half the size of what the smallest size would be in the Napoleonic Wars.
Next, the cartridge is going in. We're actually using a paper cartridge, but quite often it was made of cloth.
Ready? Dang.
All he's doing
Dang, that's half the time for the whole loading right there.
there is making sure that the actual charge is into the rear, to the breech of the gun.
It's funny because the other guy, when he was showing like loading the actual musket, he's like, you don't have to do what that guy just did. You just got to do 1, 2. That guy, they gotta connect. They gotta align on that.
And now, in order to actually ensure that the flame can actually get to it, I have to pierce that bag, which is right here.
So interesting, these little like small things right there, because otherwise, how would you know?
And there was different ways of priming. You had tubes, you had loose powder. I'm using loose powder.
So that's so the spark goes from, make sure it has that connection of gunpowder from the top through into the...
That's correct. So once you light the top, that flame literally goes into the cartridge. You would have shot in front of the cartridge. Once the charge is ignited, there's a large expanse and volume of gases. They push the ball straight out of the barrel.
Seems simple
With
enough.
a cannon ready to fire, it was time for me to get out of the way.
Ideal. Ideal. It's a little bit... I don't know what all that noise was. That's pretty good for a 2-pounder.
So we've just seen that even a very small cannon like this one can make a very big boom, basically.
Yeah.
What types of cannon do the different nations sort of use during the Napoleonic Wars? Are they all very similar?
That's correct, they are very similar. It's mainly the calibre, the actual sizes that seem to change. Wellington, his army, the Royal Artillery, they go for accuracy. So they can hit a particular target at any particular time. However, they were then targeting all different guns to different locations. Wellington, he really didn't like his gunners.
Right.
Why? Is it because of a class? Does he have like some sort of classism or something? I've heard that so many times, but maybe is that just like rumor? Or is that true? So he said the British go for more accuracy. I'm guessing the French go for fire rate and overwhelming.
Whereas Napoleon, obviously,
he served in the artillery of France.
So he has like, he's got a step above everyone just because of that.
With the academy, and he understood all of his daughters, as he called them. So one of the tactics he would have is he would want to break up the infantry, so he would have all of the guns aim at a particular area and blast a way through. The cavalry could then go through and do their job. And
So basically he makes a hole for the cavalry.
what kinds of different shots would you get as a gunner? I know obviously that we're not firing any cannonballs today, but they had lots of different kinds of shot that they would use for all kinds of horrible purposes, wouldn't they?
That's correct. On land, the guns, they could fire just a solid ball, which is commonly known as a
The round shot, and then is it called the volley shot where you have like multiple of them?
shot. You could have exploding shell, which most people know as a shrapnel today. You've got grape.
So like, is that where you have like all the shrapnel inside that per se, like nails and so forth?
You've got all
Oh yeah, grape shot. That's what I was thinking of. Grape shot.
sorts.
I see. We often see in films, don't we, when a cannon is fired at a body of men, it essentially explodes on the ground when it hits there. Is that true, or was it
No.
more kind of rolling through and sort of taking people's legs out?
The main ambition is to get the ball just to bounce just in front of the infantry
So it bounces. Oh yeah.
and then bounce up into the men. The shells can explode, and you can have a ball which is hollow. It's got a fuse. As it's lit, you'll fire it above the heads of the infantry. The fuse gets ignited as it's coming out. Once it's above the infantry, it then explodes.
Wow.
It wasn't only different ammunition, but types of trajectory that could swing a battle. During his first command at the Siege of Toulon, Napoleon found
Where of course he got to start.
a way to subdue the defenders despite the small number of artillery pieces at his disposal.
And cannon, they don't only fire straight at the enemy, they can fire up as well. Mortars it starts coming during this period.
That's correct. If you want to get over the walls of a castle or other fortifications, then
Of course, artillery's always been a thing. Always been a thing. Not really, but you know, it's been a thing for, you know, like 600 years.
mortar's perfect.
Maybe
Is it true
longer.
that he would often send his cavalry in, make the enemy form square, and then it would present a nice big target for his...
Oh, that's actually so smart.
It does. Artillery love infantry when they're formed square because they're large target and very easy pickings.
While there wasn't much an infantryman could do about a high-speed cannonball, they did at least have some effective tactics for dealing with their other nemesis on the battlefield, cavalry. Not that it would have made a charge of heavily armed horsemen any less terrifying. On the defensive, Napoleon effectively deployed giant divisional squares against the mounted Mamluks in Egypt.
Such an interesting campaign was that Egypt. Of course, he goes all the way to Acre at one point. So that campaign is super interesting.
While in attack, he became adept at making cavalry and artillery work together. From light lancers and uhlans to armoured cuirassiers, the French cavalry was the envy of Europe.
Really?
Here comes the cavalry. Right, John, we just saw you in action there. That was fantastic. What?
So you best believe you got to be trained on a horse to be able to be a part of this group.
What I always think about...
So that almost makes you have to be higher society because of, I don't know, just depending on who you are. Maybe if you're a farmer and you deal with horses, but I imagine like the cavalry people, they have to be, you know, they have to know their way around a horse.
Napoleonic Wars, artillery, infantry tactics have come on so much, but cavalry is ultimately being used the same way as it's been used for centuries, right?
Centuries, millennia.
So yes, they use the cavalry in the same way, so they would exploit gaps, be able to move around the battlefield quickly, a lot of reconnaissance. and that type of thing. But they still, when it came down to it, was a hard charge with the sabres into the enemy to give them a good fright.
Because a horse like this, it's a pretty powerful, it's the tank of the day, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. So he weighs about 800 kilos. So that coming at you at 40 miles an hour,
I'm American. I don't know what 800 kilos is.
he's going to certainly knock a few soldiers backwards.
And so cavalry, was it
I would imagine like 600 pounds.
ultimately about getting in amongst formations once they're
Maybe not that much.
broken? It's quite hard to charge at
Maybe.
a line of men who are standing with their bayonets pointed at you.
Yeah, ideally they were primarily used to exploit gaps. So you're looking to be able to catch the infantry off guard, whether that...
And obviously, historically, cavalry has always been utilized as like something to turn the enemy, especially on the flanks. You can really expose the flanks with these horsemen, and it's just like we said before with the artillery becoming psychological warfare. This becomes psychological warfare.
That's ambushing them from cover, or using that with combined arms, so you can force infantry to do certain activities and form square, so that then the cannons can have a lot more effect.
They all work together.
Shooting direct lines.
Napoleon once wrote that cavalry is useful before, during and after the battle, which is hardly surprising.
I mean, you obviously use them also to chase down retreating, routing enemies.
Audacious cavalry charges had all but won him 2 of his greatest victories at Eylau and Friedland.
And you've got the same.
We probably, I would say probably maybe, I don't know, 6 months from now, we should do the epic history videos once more. The epic history videos of Napoleon, ever from Toulon to the Battle of Paris, or actually through Waterloo as well. I mean, we've done Waterloo a few times, so I don't know. But definitely the epic history, one of my favorite series was the epic history Napoleonic Wars. We got to do that again, maybe 6 months or so from now. Just a fun thing to revisit.
Here, is
Yeah,
that?
we've already reacted to all that. So if you're hearing me say that for the first time, you've never watched that, search it up on our channel and go watch it.
Is that your main weapon that you're going to be using?
So they use the sabre for when they're up close and personal. And then they also carried carbines as well, for sort of light infantry tactics. So some of the dragoons and the French chasseurs could dismount and fight on foot.
When you dismount, though, where does your horsey go? Does it go behind you? Does it flee? Do you care where it goes? Whose property is the horse? Is it your horse on behalf of the army? Is it your horse by itself? Is it the army's horse? I don't know.
So that allows them a lot more versatility. They can get to other parts of the battlefield quicker and dismount and fight if necessary.
And some French cavalry are still wearing plate armour, essentially, aren't there? At least breastplates and helmets. This type of cavalry,
Like cataphracts, like small cataphracts.
not so heavily armoured.
Yes.
Oh, wait. He means the person, not the horse. Oh.
So this is a light cavalry uniform. It's the first chasseurs. Heavy cavalry was still using armour and stuff like that, which is very, very effective in battle. When you are fighting on the battlefield, a lot of what hits you is something that's coming from behind.
What's going on, Brady? How you doing?
So the French heavy cavalry with their breastplates and backplates was extremely effective.
And often you see infantry forming into squares as a kind
Why did this war start? Which war?
of countermeasure against cavalry. Saw it happen quite effectively at Waterloo. Why does that work?
So it provides a good blocking tactic for the cavalry. Cavalry want to get in and around the sides. When infantry forms square, it allows them to face the cavalry with their bayonets and prevents you from being able to move around their flanks or rear.
A staggering 150,000 horses were required for Napoleon's most ambitious campaign in 1812.
The horse breeding stock was probably the highest ever been in 1800.
When he ordered a vast multinational force to march into Russia. 600,000 men
Yeah, 1812 then. That's, ooh.
and 30,000 wagons made it the largest invasion force ever assembled at the time. But despite a major victory at the Battle of Borodino, and the fact that his army succeeded in occupying Moscow,
Yeah, ooh, look at that image right there. Such a telling image. You can see, like, ooh, castle in the background, just kind of like you don't know where the Russians went. This is called what is it called? Burnt earth, scorched earth. This is the scorched earth tactic that they become famous for doing. Ugh, how the whole world would look different today if something different was. So Jonathan, today, by the way, guys, I'm talking to chat if you're watching this on a replay after it's been uploaded. But and by the way, we do these on Saturdays. But anyway, Jonathan, what we're doing is in the description we have 6 videos selected. I've selected 5 from recommendations and 1 from myself.
The great adventure soon turned into a living nightmare for the soldiers and animals of the Grande Armée.
Now we know that hygiene in French camps was pretty bad.
Yeah, we already talked about the lice.
Latrines were little more than trenches dug a few meters from the tents. Washing your hands, it wasn't really recommended. There was no toilet paper, so people would use moss or leaves. Washing clothes, that wasn't something that happened regularly, and neither
You got to find a stream.
was washing your body. You'd also be sharing a bed with another soldier, so anything that he caught, you were getting as well.
That's not fun. And then is the disease, the thing that hurts and kills so many more people than war does. Ugh, can you imagine? And then if it's contagious, my God.
There's a common misconception that the freezing Russian winter killed off most of Napoleon's army on the retreat from Moscow.
Right, the summer did more actually, and the disease was ugh.
With temperatures so bone-chilling that tin buttons supposedly turned to dust.
I think that's part propaganda by Russia, though, to kind of like build up their cold, you know, I guess like don't invade us because you'll die in the winter type thing.
But this can't be the full story. Well over half of the army had already been wiped out by the beginning of November 1812, before the winter cold truly set in. And it was primarily by a louse-borne disease called typhus, which spread
Typhus fever.
easily in the cramped marching camps.
Bourgogne s'endormit sur une natte de roseau et fut bientôt réveillé par l'activité des poux. Finding himself literally covered with them, he stripped off his shirt and trousers and threw them into the fire. They exploded like the fire of 2 ranks of infantry. He couldn't get rid of them for 2 months.
What is he talking about?
All of his companions swarmed with lice.
Oh yeah, that lice.
Many were bitten and developed spotted fever.
Oh, the lice carried the fever.
Spots of gangrene appeared on men's fingers and genitals before signs of pneumonia and delirium set in. It must have been a horrifying way to go. Starvation and desertion also decimated the army as it limped its way back westwards, harassed by the enemy and denied food and forage by the Russian scorched earth tactics. It's estimated that fewer than 1 in 6 who set out on the campaign made it home.
That's insane, man. Like so many brothers, fathers, and sons perished in this. But all because Russia decided they didn't want an economy to just go to shit, because I believe it was the continental system that they had agreed with Napoleon to be a part of, so Britain would be choked out like an anaconda plan, but for Britain they said, nah, I'd rather not be able to starve.
Having been defeated and exiled by the Allied powers once, Napoleon threw the dice for the final time in 1815.
Yeah, 100 days.
Escaping his island prison on Elba and drawing together the battered remnants of the Grande Armée for one last stand. The experience of the few remaining veterans who had now survived decades of bloody campaigns must have been highly prized.
James? I've been through training now, obviously. I've taken part in the battle, and I've actually grown my own moustache.
Were you allowed to grow? I mean, I guess since he was technically a grenadier, he was told he's tall enough to be a grenadier, so maybe so.
So I was wondering if I was ready for promotion to the Imperial Guard. Ow.
No. Get on sentry duty.
That's fine. Where are they going? Those are redcoats. Oh, so this is like the reenactment part. How do you know if you're supposed to fall down? Hey, that's probably the worst squares I've ever seen in my life, but you get a pass. The horse. No. No. Yo, that's kind of dangerous. Oh no.
The Battle of Waterloo was to be a step too far for Napoleon and his army. A combined force
So this is what it is, a reenactment of Waterloo.
of British, German, Dutch and other allied troops under the Duke of Wellington held the French at bay for long enough for Marshal Blucher's Prussians to deliver a decisive blow.
But they weren't faring that well prior to the Prussians even. I mean, they did okay, but they did not do anything like they thought they could have.
The Imperial Guard, Napoleon's immortelles, couldn't turn the tide this time.
La mort s'est glissée sur nous de toutes parts. Des rangs entiers disparurent sous la mitraille. But nothing was able to stop our march. It continued with the same order as before, with the same precision. The dead were immediately replaced by those who followed. The ranks, although becoming fewer, remained in good order.
Wow.
Talking about casualty rates of the Napoleonic Wars is extremely difficult because the records simply aren't that detailed. However, it's estimated that around 1 million French soldiers died during the First Empire. That's 1805 to 1815.
And then that doesn't even count the 10 years prior to that.
It's thought that about 15% would have been carried off by disease. That's 3 times more than died during combat. And you have to remember that mortality rates were high at the time anyway. Lots of those men would have died whether they joined the army or not. Ultimately, it depended on where you were sent. We know that a huge proportion of the Grande Armée was wiped out in a single campaign.
The Russian one.
If you were sent to Russia, there was a good chance you weren't coming back. For everyone else, you had a reasonable chance of surviving your term of service.
The Peninsular one was kind of interesting. But the Italian one's probably, I guess you have the best likelihood of survival if you were in Italia or you were staying at home.
Even if you ended up fighting at the Battle of Waterloo. And it looks like I've got through my crash course unscathed.
Thank you to the French 20...
What a video, guys. This was a fun video to react to. Survive History. I think it was our first Survive History video we've ever reacted to. There's like plenty others on there. They're all pretty long, so we'll have to choose different days to do that. But look, to be a French soldier, you had to go through it. How different was being a French soldier than being an Austrian soldier, a British soldier? Maybe he has videos on that, so we'll have to check that out. But overall, what a fun video to kind of like understand, like not only what happens at in the battlefield, but between the battles, at camp, in training, and so forth. So a lot A lot to go that goes into it, whether it be the preparedness or the training. But nevertheless, appreciate you guys as always. Peace out. All right, guys. For the streaming people that are still here, we are done with this video, and our next video in order will be this one. I'm going to take a quick second to drink some Mountain Dew Zero. Got to keep the caffeine flowing. So, gut check. How are you guys doing? I'll talk for a little bit before we... I don't know. I'll talk for a little bit before we jump into this 30-minute video, which is a Sir Manatee video. Gotta go subscribe to Sir Manatee, especially like 19th century and early 20th century content. Really good narrative. How are you guys doing on the Saturday? We had some real fun difficulties earlier on in the stream. Like, I was really about to like give up. Kappa, you were there. You were there for it all. You were there the first like 5 streams where I don't know. I don't even know if I got a word out. It was that bad. I don't know. It was pretty bad. But Manatee is amazing for German stuff. Yeah. Yeah, I think he's done some Polish stuff too. I'm pretty sure. When we talked about the Polish partitions in the 18th century. Quite crazy to think about how much Poland's went through. Anything you guys want to talk about before we jump into the next video? Let me know. We'll probably jump in the next 5 minutes from now. Anything going on in the world? One thing I feel like I want to start doing is talking a little bit more about current events through the historical perspective. So hope you guys, wherever you're at in the world, you guys are doing okay, because there's a lot of current events going on where you might not be doing okay. So I hope you guys are doing okay. What's your favorite period for history? Oh, let's do some Q&A. Yeah, that'd be fun. 19th century is really great. I mean, I think the 19th century is the best period of history. I'm going to be biased. I mean, it kind of, I don't know. The first century BC and the 19th century, they're tied to me. Obviously, the 19th century is wild. You have so many countries just looking for an answer to the ideology. You have these monarchies all rising and falling so quickly. France, we did a French video just now. That's a great example. But other places like Britain or Germany, Italy, Austria, like so much history happens in the 19th century. So for that reason, there's a lot of content there. And then too, kind of tied with that is the first century BC. Rome takes the gold there, where it starts off with the Marian reforms, and you really start to understand like how Rome starts to adapt from just being a republic suited on one side to you really start to see these two forms of government start to take place, and you're either on the popular areas or you're not. And that creates what we see with the Sullen Social War. You see the civil wars. You see Rome's empire rise from the ashes of these 2 or 3 civil wars. And from there, you get something called the Roman Empire. So there's a lot of other things happening in the first century BC as well. But that's really fun, as well as the 19th century, let's say. So, yeah. Anything further, or we will start the next video. I'm gonna do a countdown. I don't know if there's a delay. 10 seconds in my head. Okay. Let's jump in. Welcome back, everyone. Hope you guys are doing amazing. We have another fun Sir Manatee video. Recording this live on a Saturday. So, by the way, I might be talking to chat. If you want to be part of these, I don't know, join them on Saturdays when we do them. We have the murder of Walther Rathenau. Hope I said that right. Rathenau. Political violence in the Weimar Republic. I don't know who Walther Rathenau is. I think this is going to be fun because we're going to be able to understand a little bit more of the Weimar Republic before it evolves to what it became. But maybe not. Let's learn. Let's just learn.
Walther Rathenau was born in Berlin on the 29th of September 1867 into a wealthy Jewish family. His father, Emil, had founded the Allgemeine Elektrizitätsgesellschaft, or AEG, a renowned producer of electrical equipment.
Okay, so he comes from an entrepreneurial family.
Young Walther was very eager to follow in his father's footsteps. After studying at the universities of Berlin and Strasbourg, as well as the Technical University of Munich, he joined the AEG in 1893 as an expert in the field of electrochemistry and led the expansion of the electrochemical works at Bitterfeld.
So he was quite smart.
Swiftly rose up the ranks inside the company, and in 1899 he was appointed to the board of directors. Just 5 years later, he was appointed to the supervisory board, and in 1912 he even became its chairman. Under his leadership, the AEG became one of the largest companies in Germany.
What is that? That's huge. It looks like something out of, like, I don't know, it looks like a time machine almost. It's probably something quite simpler, whatever that is.
And until the outbreak of the First World War, Rathenau promoted cartelization within the German electricity sector to stabilize the markets and reduce competition. But he was not just an extremely talented businessman and industrialist, he was also incredibly intelligent, well-educated.
You have to be in that sector.
And a sharp critic of the society he lived in. He thought deeply about the position of Jews in the German Empire and wrote numerous articles on economic and ethical issues for the influential weekly magazine Die Zukunft. Like many German Jews at the time, Rathenau was a staunch assimilationist and applied to leave the Jewish community as early as 1895, although he never actually did so. Furthermore, he criticized the increasingly mechanized, materialistic, and soulless world people industrialized nations, such as Germany, had to live in.
So he was more of a traditionalist? This kind of contradicts maybe with his electricity passion? I don't know.
In 1914, he also entered politics and began to lead the War Raw Materials Department in the Prussian War Ministry. His task was the management of all the vital resources, and until 1915 he coordinated raw materials vital for the war effort and managed to dampen the effects of the British naval blockade. After leaving the department, he served as an advisor to General Erich Ludendorff for a while, but after a quarrel between the two, Rathenau decided to leave all public offices and once again turn to writing.
Okay, so far a little bit of an interesting start for Mr. Walther Rathenau. By the way, is that a French name? I don't care, but I'm just wondering, is that a French name?
1917, he published his visionary magnum opus called Von kommenden Dingen, or Of Things to Come in English. In it, he harshly criticized the wasteful industrial society and presented his vision for a better and fairer world. He demanded radical societal and economic reforms and a very firm grip over the economy and resources at the hands of the state. He called for the prohibition on the production of luxury goods, the removal of the right to inherit wealth, the taxation of private fortunes out of existence.
Wait, let's back up there real quick.
Over the economy and resources at the hands of the state. He called for the prohibition on the production of luxury goods, the removal of the right to inherit wealth.
The removal of the rights to inherit wealth. Why? So are you trying to I guess he's trying to uproot. That's interesting. That's very interesting. That's a very socialist policy, I would say. It's interesting.
The taxation of private fortunes out of existence, the responsible and centralized use of raw materials, and the equal distribution of wealth. Despite his very clear ideals, he still refrained from rejoining politics until after the end of the war. He played virtually no.
I mean, if he wasn't in politics writing that book was very much a political move, a branding move. He's got to have been thinking about a long-term strategy with that.
Role in the November Revolution, and even when he did join the left-liberal German Democratic Party, he was not even put on the voting list to the National Assembly, which drew up the constitution and as such had no influence in the making of the Weimar Republic. It was only when reactionary and anti-democratic movements began to organize themselves that Rathenau was given the chance to make a career in politics. In 1920, his economic expertise was needed in the Socialization Commission, a group of experts which discussed the nationalization of some branches of the German industry. Later, he was consulted as an expert in the matter of war reparations. In 1921, he joined the government under Joseph Wirth and became the Minister of Reconstruction.
Okay, so he's getting his from the Minister of Reconstruction, partly probably after the war effort. So what comes next for him?
His first major achievement was the Wiesbaden Agreement between him and his French colleague Louis Loucheur, which stipulated that Germany would pay parts of its reparations to France in the form of deliveries of goods instead of currency payments.
Okay, a little bit. Okay, that might be better for them, but what's next?
Rathenau lost his post in October 1921 because his party left the government, but he still remained active as a financial advisor, and in January 1922 he became the new foreign minister. During this time he became one of the most important advocates for the cooperation with the Allies when it came to fulfilling Germany's demands as set by the Treaty of Versailles. He made
demands of reparations, the demands of demilitarization, that type of demands.
Made it clear that non-compliance was simply not an option, as France would simply use force to achieve its goals, most likely by occupying the Ruhr area, which would be much more costly than simply delivering the required coal. In April 1922, Rathenau tried to overcome Germany's international isolation and to gain room for maneuver in foreign affairs by signing the Treaty of Rapallo with Soviet Russia, which was later extended to all Soviet republics. Both Germany and the Soviet Union agreed to renounce all demands for reparations, to open up diplomatic missions, and to begin economic relations. Germany was, finally, no longer internationally ostracized.
So the Soviet Union basically gave them the out of becoming a nation state on the playing field of nations once again.
This was Rathenau's biggest political achievement, and it remains uncertain what further contributions he might have made. He was one of the brightest personalities in Weimar history, who combined intelligence with politics and who showed great organizational skills and contemplation. Furthermore, he felt a big responsibility towards the German public, was a patriot and firmly stood behind the Weimar Republic. Unfortunately, he became the target of right-wing nationalist circles, who saw in him the personification of everything they despised.
Yeah. But you can't win with these people, so...
Rathenau was a Jew, an intellectual, and
yeah, there you go.
a Republican. His pragmatic and solution-oriented approach to the question of war reparations was denounced as treacherous, and the Treaty of Rapallo was interpreted as a secret conspiracy between the communists and world Jewry. Wilhelm Henning, a politician for the anti-Semitic and far-right German National People's Party, wrote a hateful tirade about Rathenau. No sooner has the international Jew Rathenau got his hands on German honor than it is no longer an item of discussion. German honor is not a bargaining chip for international Jewish dealings. German honor will be atoned for, but you, Mr. Rathenau, and those behind you will be held accountable by the German people.
So what did he do?
On the 24th of June 1922, Rathenau's enemies decided to strike. On that day, he was driven by his chauffeur to the prestigious Kurfürstendamm with the goal of reaching the Foreign Office in Berlin-Mitte. Neither he nor his driver noticed that they were being followed by 3 men in a car. As they approached a bend, Rathenau's driver slowed down before a curve to let a horse carriage cross the street. The pursuers sensed their opportunity and caught up with Rathenau's car until they were driving parallel to each other. Suddenly, one of the men got out a submachine gun, quickly aimed and then opened fire at the foreign minister. When Rathenau's driver hit the brakes, another attacker threw a hand grenade into the victim's car, causing further injuries. The driver rushed back to Rathenau's mansion, but it was already too late. The attacks were fatal. Walther Rathenau was dead.
My gosh, we're only 6 minutes in and he's dead?
News of the wicked murder quickly spread in the capital. The painter Max Liebermann remembers the following reactions very vividly. I cannot forget that terrible day when my neighbor in Wannsee came into the garden crying. It was 11 o'clock in the morning. I was standing over there in the garden where my painting easel is. Walther has been murdered, he cried. The writer and diplomat, Harry Graf Kessler, wrote in his diary that he was stunned, as if struck by lightning. The historian Erich Marx, who had been waiting for Rathenau in the Foreign Office, writes, A horrified whisper went through the hall and we were sent home. Rathenau had been murdered on his way to see us. Reichspräsident
Yeah, but like, what did he do?
Friedrich Ebert was on his holiday in the Black Forest when he heard the news. The loss of such a valuable statesman hurt him so much that he got a biliary colic. Against his doctor's advice, he nevertheless made his way to Berlin. The writer and editor of the influential Berliner Tageblatt wrote an article on the front page in which he expressed his dismay. At the moment when we published the news of Walther Rathenau's assassination here, we can only express our shock that this brilliantly gifted man, who stood out far above the ordinary and felt warmly for his country, has now, like many others before him, been murdered by an emissary of the conspiracy lurking in the shadows.
Is this because of the is this because he was just a Jew? Is this because of the fervor that just was oriented on the right side because of the stab in the back theory? What is the reason he was assassinated? Were for a couple of reasons.
And we express our deepest horror at the unspeakable conditions in which we live and under which we must now be governed. We are reluctant to accuse entire circles when the act is that of an individual, but here the guilt is so clear, the responsibility so obvious, that it is impossible not to press charges and obscure the glaringly obvious truth. With boundless baseness and inexplicable meanness, Rathenau has been slandered and defamed in German nationalist and German racialist assemblies, and in most newspapers of this persuasion, and this intellectual preparation made the deed possible, made it inevitable. Unfortunately, Rathenau's murder was not an isolated incident, but rather the culmination of a series of assassinations.
Okay, so these other people, Eisner, Gary, Erzberger, they all as well. Okay, Capello says he was a Jew, he cooperated with the Soviets in that treaty, he wanted to pay reparations with nationalists, saw that as a betrayal. Interesting. Wow.
Targeting prominent politicians in the early years of the Weimar Republic. In January 1919, the communist leaders Rosa Luxemburg and Karl Liebknecht were brutally murdered by counter-revolutionary soldiers who had been instructed by the government to crack down on the Spartakist uprising. 1 month later, the socialist minister-president of Bavaria, Kurt Eisner, was shot by a dismissed officer. In June 1921, the Bavarian independent social democratic politician Karl Gareis was murdered by members.
So there's just a string of murders right now. Just a ton of political violence in the Weimar Republic, which is the title of the video.
Of the paramilitary Freikorps after threatening to expose right-wing extremist mobilization measures. In August 1921, Matthias Erzberger, who had signed the armistice at Compiègne, which ended the First World War, was shot on a walk in the Black Forest by 2 former Marine officers. In June 1922, the mayor of Kassel, Philipp Scheidemann, who had proclaimed the Republic from the balcony of the Reichstag in 1918, was attacked with hydrocyanic acid, but he managed to fight back and fortunately survived. And all these were just some of the most prominent examples. Whoever stood up for the Republic, argued for the fulfillment of the demands set at Versailles, or called for the fight against far-right nationalist units, had to fear that he could be the next target. Most of the murderers had a similar background. They were former soldiers or Freikorps members who struggled to find a new purpose in life after being demobilized. They struggled to...
So they struggled. They probably had entered a inflated economy. They couldn't probably find a position. They blamed their misfortune on those that surrendered, and the stab in the back theory times, the other nationalist fervor created them into an echo chamber of hate.
Reintegrate into society after being used to years of violence and soldier life, and they hated the Republic because they believed that they had been abandoned or betrayed. And so, many of them tried to cope with their pointless existence by taking out their anger at politicians who they
which solved nothing either.
Deemed responsible. Right? On the same day as Rathenau's death, the Reichstag came together for a special session with the intention of finally fighting back. The chairman of the German National People's Party, Karl Helfferich, who had been one of Rathenau's harshest critics, was booed out when he entered parliament, and the Social Democrats, Communists and Independent Social Democrats pointed at him while shouting, "This is the murderer." The situation only calmed down when the president of the Reichstag threatened to dissolve the session. Afterwards, Chancellor Joseph Wirth announced strong measures against the attackers and their supporters. He received thunderous applause from the democratic parties, whose members once stood up and yelled, "Long live the Republic," 3 times. In a second session in the evening, Wirth read out the emergency regulation, which the president had...
So he was a Republican, so anyone that's a Republican is an enemy. So they're kind of like having this cold civil war right now in the Weimar Republic, right?
Just formulated. The new law threatened the prohibition of all anti-republican associations and assemblies and made insulting the republic and its representatives a punishable offence. A second emergency decree 4 days later announced the death sentence for everybody who was a member of a group that advocated for the murder of elected representatives.
I mean, now that's kind of stretching a little bit too far. However, freedom of speech only gets you so far in the Weimar Republic, probably.
On the 25th of June, the trade unions organised a mass demonstration in the Berlin Lustgarten, which was attended by hundreds of thousands of people who waved the black, red and gold flag. On that day, another session took place in the parliament, and Wirth used the opportunity to condemn the murderers. There stands the enemy, dripping its poison into the wounds of a people. There stands the enemy, and there is no doubt about it. The enemy stands on the right. Once again, he received thunderous applause. On the 27th of June, the official funeral ceremony took place. Rathenau's coffin was put up behind the speaker's podium of the parliament, and President Friedrich Ebert gave an inspiring speech. This heinous act did not affect Rathenau alone. It affects Germany as a whole. The bloody deed...
Yeah, I mean, anyone that's... I mean, probably all his colleagues feel the same way, especially the string of murders that are happening. They probably all feel like there's a target on their back.
Was directed against the German Republic and against the idea of democracy. It is an attack on the nation. Later that day, a massive crowd of people gathered outside, despite the rain, to accompany Rathenau on his last procession to the family grave in Oberschöneweide. It seemed like the German populace was united. Even staunch conservatives like Viktor Klemperer were moved. The disgustingly vile murder has pushed me far to the left. But not everyone was mourning. Many German nationalists, especially in Bavaria, secretly rejoiced at the news of Rathenau's death. In some barracks of the army, where sympathy for nationalist causes ran deep, drinking bouts were organised. At the University of Heidelberg, physics professor and Nobel Prize winner Philipp Lenard refused to close down his institute for the day and put the flag on half-mast.
Oh, dang.
While all this was happening, the authorities were emphatically searching for the murderers. It was pretty clear that they were not just confused perpetrators, but came from an organised right-wing radical organisation. The murderers operated within a large countrywide relationship network, and the attack was planned in a very decentralised way. The two attackers were quickly identified as 23-year-old Erwin Kern and 26-year-old Hermann Fischer. They were former Marine officers and were studying at the universities of Kiel and Chemnitz. The car they used had been picked up in Freiberg in Saxony, and the submachine gun came from army stocks in Schwerin. Before the attack, the two men often got visited by...
So this was like a premeditated, obviously it's premeditated, but this as like deep, like organized crime, like there's an organized crime unit that has deployed this assassination. So what else is on their roadmap?
Middlemen who supplied them with cash and information. Their escape after Rathenau's death also points to them being part of an underground network. At first, Kern and Fischer made their way north to the Baltic coast, where they planned to hop on a sailing ship and escape to Denmark. But due to the stormy weather, the two of them decided to instead turn south and get to Bavaria, a state which...
Where all of this nationalists and rights-leaning individuals... Bavaria is the place to be for that, really.
Was notorious for tolerating right-wing radical organizations. Yeah. While they were taking a rest in the Saaleck Castle near Naumburg, they got tracked down by the local population and then swiftly surrounded by the police.
Okay, so not everybody's feeling the same way, obviously, because they were ousted by the public.
Their game was over, but they weren't going to surrender. They climbed up the East Tower and gave one last cheer to their leader. "We are students from Kiel. Please give our regards to Captain Erhard. Captain Erhard, long live, long live, long live. We know how we must die. We die for our ideals, and our successors will follow." Shortly after, one of the attackers died after being shot by a policeman, and the other responded by committing suicide. But who was this Captain Erhard? Hermann Erhard was born in 1881, and after dropping out of school, he joined the Imperial German Navy. He proved to be rather capable, and managed to rise up the role of corvette captain. After the end of the First World War, he became horrified at the thought of a socialist revolution, and even though he was an ultra-nationalist and an enemy of democracy, he offered his services to the new republic.
Okay, well, that's honorable, I guess.
Erhard founded a paramilitary Freikorps unit, named it after himself, and then used it to violently crack down on communist insurrections in central Germany, as well as the Bavarian Soviet Republic.
Okay.
He also fought against Polish irregulars in Upper Silesia. In March 1920, he and his brigade played a major role in the infamous Kapp-Lüttwitz Putsch.
Yep, we did that one.
I made a whole video about the Kapp-Lüttwitz Putsch a while ago, so I'll keep it short for now.
It's basically a coup.
After the government had announced the dissolution of all Freikorps and the reduction of the armed forces as demanded by the Treaty of Versailles, a group of conspirators consisting of Freikorps leaders, disloyal army officers and large landowners decided to plan a coup. On the 13th of March 1920, the Marinebrigade Erhard marched on Berlin and occupied the capital. The government was subsequently forced to flee because the army refused to take any action. And so the Social Democratic Party called for a nationwide general strike, which brought the country to a complete standstill. Due to resistance from the workers, sloppy planning, and the incompetence of the coup leaders, the planned uprising came to nothing after just 4 days. After the putsch, Erhard fled to Munich, where the local police headquarters supplied him with fake passports. In Bavaria, Erhard...
It's so crazy, bro. The different regions of Germany at this time are so... That's why I say it's like a cold civil war. They're so politically misaligned. Maybe it's the institutions, not the people, though.
Quickly began to organize a reactionary underground movement and recruited members all over Germany, Austria, and Hungary. The name of his organization was Organisation Konsul, or OC, with Konsul being a code name for Erhard himself. The OC was tightly organized, and the individual local groups received their orders directly from Munich. By summer 1921, the OC had several...
There's so many, like in the early 20th century, there's so many underground networks. Obviously, there's a lot that on the socialist side and the communist side, but also on the fascist side as well.
1,000 members, many of whom were former members of Erhard's Marinebrigade. The OC was only uncovered after the murder of Matthias Erzberger, when the Public Prosecutor's Office of Baden charged Erhard's deputy, Manfred von Killinger, and numerous other conspirators with murder. The investigation caused loud protests from Bavaria because so-called patriotic men were persecuted by a non-Bavarian authority. Furthermore, due to the lacking evidence and the persistent silence of the accused, most suspects were quickly released. In the end, only OC leader, Manfred von Killinger, was brought before court but unfortunately acquitted from all charges. The half-hearted and constantly obstructed investigation ensured that the OC was able to continue organizing itself and carry out its assassinations of Walther Rathenau and Philipp Scheidemann.
Seems like there's just not enough centralization on their investigation efforts.
But what was the OC's goal? Essentially, it was nothing more than the toppling of Weimar democracy. From his experiences gathered during the Kapp-Lüttwitz Putsch, Erhard had learned that a militant approach was impossible, especially without support from the army. Erhard knew that the army was only partially loyal to the Republic, and he wanted to get it on his side. But that could only happen if there was a common threat, a left-wing insurrection, for example. So Rathenau's death was nothing more than a strategy to provoke and to cause chaos.
Do you actually think that they did that to do that, or they did that just because they wanted him dead? I think it's the latter, and then they used that as a byproduct possibility.
In 1930, one conspirator described that the OC wanted to use Rathenau's death to provoke the communists into striking, so that Erhard could seize power and impose a dictatorship in the counterattack by the quickly assembled Freikorps. As we all know, this strategy did not work out. Instead, the parliament passed the Law for the Protection of the Republic in July 1922, which banned all anti-constitutional organizations, punished politically motivated acts of violence more severely, and established a special court to deal with the law. From now on, the Reichstag saw it as a priority to deal with anti-democratic threats coming from both the far right and the far left. However, the government was unable to apply the law as consistently as planned. On the one hand, there were widely differing views on the necessity of this law, and on the other hand, there were strong protests from some states, especially from Bavaria. The right-wing Bavarian government under Hugo Graf von Lerchenfeld saw the law as an encroachment on the sovereign rights of the states, and issued its own emergency decree to protect the constitution. After much back and forth, Bavaria and the Weimar state finally agreed on a makeshift compromise. The seemingly united state resistance against the enemies of the Republic after the Rathenau assassination thus quickly crumbled. For example, judges now had the opportunity to take stricter action against anti-democrats, but they often judged political offenders from the left
it's a slippery slope, obviously.
much more harshly than those from the right. A communist was sent to prison for 4 weeks for describing Germany as a robber republic,
My God.
while a right-wing nationalist was merely fined 70 marks by the same court for using the expression Jewish Republic.
Okay, so it's rules for thee, but not for me. Okay.
On top of that, Bavaria still remained a safe retreat for all enemies of the Republic. When the Prussian authorities decided to ban a student assembly at the University of Marburg after fearing that the organizers would use the event to justify the Rathenau murder,
Always begins at a university, usually.
the racialist section of the student body simply retreated to the Bavarian city of Würzburg. The court case brought against those behind Rathenau's death also proved to be unsatisfactory. In October 1922, 17 defendants were brought to trial, most of them still being young students from a well-off background who had been disoriented from the tumultuous war and post-war years and then joined right-wing nationalist organizations. The driver, Ernst Werner Techow, was sentenced to 15 years in prison, and Ernst von Salomon, the man who organized the car, received 5 years in prison. Many other participants
To get some sort of justice, I'm guessing?
got 3 years in prison. These sentences were unusually harsh, and the court did not show any mercy. The main problem with the process was that the court never truly bothered to uncover the organization that was behind the murder. As the chief public prosecutor, Ludwig Ebermeier, explained it, the thread leading from Rathenau's murder and the perpetrators in various directions
Are too tangled. We're too lazy to go after, is what you're saying, Ludwig.
too tangled to be untangled today. It would take until October 1924 that the Organisation Konsul was finally brought before court, but the proceedings were disheartening. The judges openly showed their sympathy towards the terrorists. Ebermeier described the accused
Patriotic. That's crazy.
as honourable, patriotic and fearless men. Only 16 of the 26 accused were actually punished, and only to laughable prison sentences lasting between 3 and 8 months. Hermann Erhard himself escaped punishment by fleeing to Austria. Subsequently, he lost more and more importance. After joining the NSDAP in the 1930s and placing himself and his brigade under the command of the Reichsführer SS, he fled back to Austria after the Night of the Long Knives, where he died in 1971. At first, the Rathenau murder seemed to unite the Germans against the anti-democrats and strengthen the young republic. The outrage was directed entirely at the radical right, and with
So Bavaria was under probably huge scrutiny by most of the rest of Germany, right?
the law for the protection of the republic, Weimar now had a powerful tool at its disposal. Particularly notable was the banning of the Deutsch-Völkischer Schutz- und Trutzbund in most states, which had been one of the largest racialist and anti-Semitic organizations at the time. Even the German National People's Party decided to reconsider their positions, at least somewhat. Wilhelm Henning, who had compiled the anti-Semitic tirade against Rathenau, was excluded from the party, and shortly after those sympathetic to him left as well. The party's radically anti-Semitic and racialist wing broke away to form a new party, which soon faded into obscurity. The Rathenau murder was also one of the main reasons for the reunification of the two social democratic parties in September 1922, which caused a significant shift to the left within the Social Democratic Party. In this short period, where the Republic seemed to be stronger than ever before, Harry Graf Kessler wrote, "The bitterness towards the murderers is deep and genuine, as is the determination to maintain the Republic, which runs much deeper than the pre-war monarchical patriotism." In the long term, however, Rathenau's death did more harm than good. For one, it obviously deprived Germany of one of its most capable and intelligent statesmen. Rathenau remains one of the biggest what-ifs in.
Is it really just because he was able to undo that stranglehold that Europe had put on Germany? And he's so obviously early and being a big part of that as foreign minister. What could he have done for the social policies of Germany? What could he have done for the economy of Germany, especially a state that had hyperinflation and had indemnities that they had to pay?
Weimar history, and the subsequent course of events could most definitely have gone down a very different path if he had had the chance to unfold his full potential. On top of that, a political crisis broke out in November 1922 after President Ebert had demanded an expansion of the government in the face of the growing economic crisis. The Centre Party and the German Democratic Party wanted to include the National Liberal German People's Party, something which the Social Democrats opposed due to disagreements over how to stabilise the German currency. Insurmountable obstacles and dwindling confidence in the Chancellor ultimately led to the resignation of the Wirth government. It was replaced by a bourgeois minority cabinet consisting of the Centre, the German Democratic Party, the German People's Party, and the Bavarian People's Party, and some independents under the non-party Chancellor, Wilhelm Kuno.
Have like a coalition?
Hopes that the new government's economic competence would resolve the crisis and secure a reparations compromise proved to be misplaced. After the failure of the Paris Reparations Conference in January 1923, the French and the Belgian armies marched into the Ruhr area. This was the kickoff to the Year of Crisis, in which the German people suffered from
Oh, that's when the inflation really kicked off. Never mind.
hyperinflation, and in which the Republic had to face separatist movements, political upheaval, and coup attempts. The vile assassination of Walther Rathenau had a lasting impact on German society. The 24th of June, the day of his death, remained a day for public mourning. For many Democrats and liberals, Rathenau became a martyr, and it became an annual tradition to visit his grave. Streets and schools were named after him.
I'm guessing his grave was desecrated when by 1933. I'm just guessing.
Freinwalde Castle, which Rathenau lived in, was gifted to the county of Oberbarnim under the condition that it be made publicly accessible and turned into a museum. In 1929, a commemorative plaque was unveiled at the scene of the crime. This all changed after the Nazi seizure of power in 1933. They wanted to erase all public memory of this representative of the Republic they so detested. The commemorative plaque was removed, the streets and schools were renamed, and the museum at Freinwalde Castle was turned into a shrine to its former owners, the Hohenzollern family. The Nazis even had the audacity to turn Saaleck Castle, the place where Rathenau's murderers hid in, into a place of worship. An ornamented gravestone was erected at the local cemetery, honouring Kern and Fischer.
Crazy, man.
After German reunification, Saaleck remained a popular pilgrimage site for neo-Nazis and far-right extremists, though these visits have been monitored and condemned by authorities.
Good!
In 2000, the gravestone was fortunately carried away and destroyed, but many
Took that long?
anti-democrats still frequent the site. In 2012, unknown individuals carried out a cloak and dagger operation, placing a boulder in the cemetery field on which the names of the assassins had been carved in runic script. It is likely that the boulder was set up by local National Democratic Party politicians.
That's so weird, man.
A neo-Nazi party. Fortunately, however, events like these are exceedingly rare, and Rathenau gets the recognition he deserves. In 1946, the commemorative plaque at the site of his death was set up again. Once again, many streets and schools in Germany are named after him. In Nuremberg, there is an underground station named after him, which also bears his portrait. In 2008, the Walther Rathenau Institute was founded in Berlin by two entrepreneurs with close ties to the Liberal Free Democratic Party, and with the goal of preserving Rathenau's heritage. The Institute also awards the Walther Rathenau Prize to commend outstanding achievements in foreign policy. Some notable recipients were Hans-Dietrich Genscher, Mark Rutte, Margot Friedländer, Angela Merkel, and Donald Tusk. In honouring Rathenau today, Germany not only remembers a man, but reaffirms the principles he stood for, which is the absolute least he deserves. Okay.
Wow, what an interesting video. It seems like he was a martyr for the Republic, the Republican values. He was unfortunately in a time where the nationalists were so mad, and so they just had no reason to do anything else but to try to fight the power that they saw as the reason of their unhappiness. And because of that, a man died. And as Kappa told us in the chat, by the way, like I said, these are live streamed. He was a Jew. He was a Republican. He did things that the nationalists, the far right parties, just did not like. And to answer, they just killed him, and they thought that would solve their issues. And of course, by 1933, he was erased from the map, but thankfully, in 1946, he was restored. I appreciate you guys as always. I'll see you guys next time. Peace out. Bye. All right. Well, that was the Weimar Republic video. Oh. Kappa, if you're still here, any final thoughts? Any final thoughts on that crazy happening in the Weimar Republic? Let's check our stream as well. Sure, everything's still is everything still flowing good? Can you hear me good? The volume good, all that stuff for anyone that's here. Make sure that everything still sounds good. Sure, everything. I genuinely think Rathenau was probably one of the great figures in foreign policy, Weimar-wise. I think there's a lot to be studied still on him for me. I think opening up the doors are really interesting, you know, especially being able to get out of some of the indemnities and open up the foreign policy of the Weimar Republic to the Soviet Union. That was probably some huge steps to get that going. Yeah, so like I'm guessing Kappa, a lot of the others just they try to find a way out of it. They try to find out a way out of the reparations or something like that. Had to have. Okay. All right, so we have some more videos to do. So next up on the chopping block is Warhawk. The Civil War video. Yeah, it seems that way. All right. Here we go. Welcome back, everyone. Hope you're doing amazing. We have a Warhawk video. This is going to be called The Battle of Eltham's Landing, flanking Joe Johnston. Obviously, Joe Johnston, one of the most prominent generals. So, I think he's a general. How do you flank Joe Johnston? Let's find out, shall we? Glad you guys are here. Oh, we got some aerial warfare right there with that hot air balloon. The journey that was one that will never be forgotten by the soldiers of that command. The banks and the sloping hills were green with heavy foliage of May. And the beauty of the scene far exceeded anything before witnessed by the men of the soil of old Virginia.
On the night and early morning of May 2nd, 3rd, 1862, Brigadier General William B. Franklin's detached 1st Division of Major General Irvin McDowell's 1st Corps, 11,000 strong and having been sent down the Chesapeake Bay on troop ships in order to reinforce Major General McClellan on the peninsula, finally arrive at Fort Monroe and begin debarking from their vessels to join McClellan's troops in the siege works outside Yorktown. However, the next day, May 4th, the Federals find Yorktown abandoned, and the rebels moving up the peninsula to try and escape towards Richmond.
Yep, and they're obviously trying to hit the capital, but we'll see how that goes.
McClellan quickly orders Franklin's division.
We just watched the, well, we didn't just watch, but the previous video we watched on the ACW was the Battle of Williamsburg, which is kind of like a stronghold between the Bay and Richmond.
To re-embark on their troop ships to sail up the York River, then land on a beach called Brick House Point, located near Eltham Plantation and positioned opposite the river from West Point, Virginia. His hopes are to cut off General Johnston's retreat before he can reach the defensive works outside Richmond.
Look how close West Point is to them. That's crazy.
If Franklin,
so many of these people trained together at West Point. That's why it's crazy.
Franklin's troops move fast enough. They can move southward through Barnesville and Burt Ordinary and hit Joe Johnston's army as it retreats through Williamsburg. If the plan works as McClellan intends, then Johnston's Department of Northern Virginia might get caught between two Union forces and be smashed for good. The plan doesn't work out the way Little Mac hopes. However, as his troops pursuing Johnston become caught up at the Battle of Williamsburg on May 5th, fighting against James Longstreet's division, which is serving as a rearguard for Johnston's retreat. Meanwhile, on the same afternoon, Franklin's 1st Division gets to work. His troops make haste for the newly opened wharf at Yorktown. Brigadier General Franklin reasons that if his men reach Brickhouse Point by sundown, May 6th, they might salvage McClellan's plan and get in the Confederate rear. From the wharf,
that's going to be everything, you know, if they're able to flank the Confederates here, that's going to force them to get out of the region or surrender.
At Yorktown, Franklin's 3 brigades under Brigadier Generals George W. Taylor, Henry W. Slocum, and John Newton load onto transports and sail upriver. For the soldiers of Franklin's division, it is a beautiful voyage.
And it's crazy that this river's right there and they don't have sentries or anything up. Now, we don't know if they don't, but I would imagine the Confederates would have some sort of sentries.
From the decks of the R.S. Spalding, a New Yorker in Slocum's 2nd
think they
Brigade
do.
recalled, the journey was one that will never be forgotten by the soldiers of that command. The banks and sloping hills are green with the heavy foliage of May, and the beauty of the scene far exceeded anything before witnessed by the men on the soil of old Virginia. At first, it appears as if Franklin's troops have arrived in time. At 3 p.m. on May 6th, the first of Franklin's soldiers come ashore on pontoon boats, landing at Brick House Point, just opposite West Point. West Point is a small river town that occupies a spit of land between the Mattapony and Pamunkey rivers.
Small river town. I thought it was also like one of the most important academies. Is this a different... Am I stupid? Is this not the same academy that everyone's training at?
The 1st regiment to come ashore, the 27th New York under Colonel Joseph J. Bartlett, deploys as skirmishers. Meanwhile, the rest of the division hastens to build an artificial dock out of the pontoon boats. Everything looks prosperous for Franklin's 1st Division. The Bluecoats are exactly where they are needed to be to strike the Confederate rear. A 12-mile march might put them at Burnt Ordinary by midnight. If they make the nighttime trek, they'd be astride the Confederate line of retreat. Unfortunately, General Franklin's men discover they aren't alone at Brick House Point. To their surprise, they discover that General Joe Johnston has dispatched Brigadier General William C.H. Whiting's division, 11,000 strong, to
11,000 strong. That's not going to be easy to go through.
Barnesville, just 6 miles south of the beachhead. Johnston does not intend to counterattack, but merely wants to use Barnesville as a line of retreat from Williamsburg. However, once Johnston learns of the presence of Franklin's division ahead of him, he feels it is wise to brush it aside. Although he tells General Whiting to fill out the Union beachhead, the Confederates under Whiting's command plan to make an aggressive attack. They would attempt to drive the Union troops back into the York River.
So what's the coordination with McClellan in this entire, tactic?
The 27th New York detects the Confederate presence as the New York skirmishers trudge into the dense woods southeast of Eltham. They capture 2 soldiers belonging to the 5th Texas from Brigadier General John Bell Hood's Texas Brigade. Upon hearing this, General Franklin decides to hold his position until the size of the enemy threat could be determined.
They're so wide too. These little, gray dots are Confederate, I would say, sentries or like skirmishers or so forth.
Daylight remaining, he orders a strong picket line to advance into the woods, while the rest of his troops bed for the night. The soldiers of the 27th New York receive no opportunity to sleep. They remain on alert all evening. In the darkness, it doesn't take long for Union and Confederate skirmishers to make contact with each other. At midnight, 2nd Lieutenant John...
Think about this. It is dark. You have no light between like maybe some oil lamps, maybe some torches, and the moonlight and stars.
L. Bailey of Company D is trooping his line of pickets.
Campfires. I'm sure there's campfires. It's got to be some sort of campfires, unless you're told not to do that because, that would obviously give away position.
He had just stopped to speak to one of them, Corporal Henry Crocker, when he hears footsteps approaching. Both he and Crocker grab rifles. Bailey shouts, "Halt! Who comes there?" The 2 shadowy figures emerge from the brush. Both of them are Confederates. They raise their muskets. 2 shots ring out. Only Crocker and one of the Confederates have fired, but both of them hit their targets. Crocker kills a Confederate sergeant by shooting him through the neck. The other shadowy figure, who happens to be Private John Cousins of the 4th Alabama, kills Lieutenant Bailey, struck in the heart. Bailey dies instantly. He is just 26 years old. The noise alerts the skirmish line on both sides.
And then it's just all gonna go down.
Throughout the woods, jumpy pickets begin firing at nothing, alarmed by the sound of 2 shots coming from the deadly encounter along the 27th New York's picket line. Crocker and his companion race back into the woods, reloading as they go. They spend the remainder of the night in silence, awaiting an attack that never comes. The surviving Alabama soldier, Private Cousins, likewise beats a hasty retreat. He reports the news of this deadly encounter to his superiors.
What's going on, Ben? I did not discover the Federals till they were almost close enough to shake hands.
The next morning, General Franklin has Brigadier General Newton's 3rd Brigade posted in the woods on either side of the landing road. supported in the rear by portions of Brigadier General Taylor's 1st Brigade, known as the 1st New Jersey Brigade, and Brigadier General Slocum's 2nd Brigade. At 7 a.m. on May 7, 1862, the Battle of Eltham's Landing, also known by Northerners present at the fighting as the Battle of West Point.
Oh, so there's, you know, a lot of times there's two different names for battles. So this must be like the Confederate name for the battle. And I wonder why that is. Did the Confederates get the upper hand?
Begins when the Federal pickets on Newton's right flank from the 95th Pennsylvania start firing on the lead cavalry pickets from Whiting's division. Newton immediately directs Captain William Hexamer's Battery A, New Jersey Artillery, with 4 10-pounder pair rifles, to limber up and proceed towards the threatened position. Pickets from the 95th Pennsylvania then signal the rebels approaching in a large force, with cavalry and artillery upon Newton's right flank. Colonel John M. Gosselin, commanding the 95th Pennsylvania, receives orders from Brigadier General Newton to deploy his regiment as skirmishers through the extensive and heavy woods towards the reported Confederate positions. Colonel Gosselin deploys companies A, B, C, D, E, F, and K to the
Not G?
right and left of Barnesville Road, leading directly through the woods, holding the remaining 3 companies, G, H, and I, near the edge and center of the woods as a result.
So they got like, look, still, it's so crazy because you got, if this is accurate, the Confederates are so spread out here. So they're having to try to figure out how wide they have to go. And not to think that there's 11,000 others kind of a little bit back here. And where's McClellan? Where's all the Union at?
Reserve. Lieutenant Colonel Town commands the right wing of the Federal skirmishers, while Major Hubbs oversees the left wing and Colonel Gosselin stands in the middle of the skirmish line. The companies of the 95th Pennsylvania advance cautiously forward through the heavy woods southwest of the building known as a brick house. Meanwhile, William H.C. Whiting directs Hood's Texas Brigade, made up of the 1st, 4th, and 5th Texas Infantry Regiments, along with the 18th Georgia, to advance on the brick house along the Barnesville Road and attack Newton's pickets. Meanwhile, Brigadier General Wade Hampton's brigade is ordered to detach the 19th Georgia and the Hampton Legion to skirmish on the division's right flank. Whiting's brigade under Colonel Evander M. Law would be held in reserve. The Confederate cavalry doesn't do Whiting's men any favors. Some of them have fallen asleep at their vedette post the night before and do nothing to guide Whiting's infantrymen when they come passing through. General Hood nearly loses his life because of poor reconnaissance.
We've seen so far in the American Civil War so many commanders or leaders die because of either incompetence of their men or incompetence for themselves.
Around 9 a.m., Hood finds several Confederate cavalry scouts asleep at their post.
I mean, well, only thing I can think about to even give them the benefit of the doubt is they were probably shaking in the night because of what had happened earlier.
Paying them no mind, he marches his brigade through the line of vedettes, stopping only when he encounters Union skirmishers of Company F, 16th New York. As Hood remembered it, I did not discover the Federals till they were almost close enough to shake hands. A wide-eyed Union corporal levels his weapon at Hood, demanding the surrender. Having a quick choice to make, surrender or run for it, Hood leaps from his horse and orders, "Forward into line!"
Well, it's about to go down. What would your Texans have done, sir, if I had ordered them to charge and drive back the enemy?
Hood's lead regiment, the 4th Texas, begins changing formation, going from column into line of battle. The men hastily load their muskets as they make the tricky change of formation. Earlier in the morning, Hood had given orders to march with unloaded weapons. Now, as he stares down the barrel of the Union rifle, he greatly regrets that decision. As Hood frantically watches his line form, the Union soldier who accosted him, Corporal George J. Love of Company F, 16th New York, draws a bead on him. For an instant, it looks as if Hood's number is up. Luckily, one of his men, Private John Dill of the 4th Texas, has defied orders and marched the entire way to Brickhouse Point with a loaded weapon. He fires upon Corporal Love, killing him, and saves his brigade commander's life.
Lucky is all I gotta say. Lucky.
Hood's Texas Brigade deploys in full line of battle, pushing back 2 companies from the 16th New York. Companies F and G of the 16th fight hard, giving away stubbornly. Between them, they number 3 officers and 102 enlisted men. During the battle, the New Yorkers lose 6 killed, 11 wounded, and 2 captured.
This is why it's called the Battle of Eltham's Landing and not the Battle of West Point, because the Confederates win. I'm sure that's why.
Colonel Gosline orders his regiment's own skirmishers to fall back through the woods. They continue to fall back along the main road, still keeping a brisk fire towards Hood's Texans as they withdraw. General Hood keeps the 18th Georgia led by Colonel William T.H. Wofford in reserve, then throws forward the 4th Texans as skirmishers. Supported by the 1st Texas Infantry Regiment under Colonel Alex T. Rainey, the Texans proceed to drive the 95th Pennsylvania through the dense woods while under heavy fire.
It's just like that. Just like that, it's almost over. I congratulate myself that we have maintained our position. Oh, so this is the USA side.
Whiting's brigades moved to drive into the woods, pushing back the Union skirmishers 1.5 miles. When the Confederate artillerists argued that the transports are beyond their
Franklin kind of looks like Grant, you know?
range, and with the Union infantry sheltered by a bluff, Whiting abandons the attack. This minor engagement has lasted only 2 hours. General Whiting's advance secures the Confederate flank, permitting the uneventful passage of the wagon train. General Johnston is pleased with the outcome, considering the success his men enjoyed in executing the order to
They needed that since Williamsburg.
the enemy gently and fall back. He humorously asked Brigadier General Hood, "What would your Texans have done, sir, if I had ordered them to charge and drive back the enemy?" Hood replies, "I suppose, General, they would have driven them into the river and tried to swim out and capture the gunboats."
They probably wouldn't have done that, but good answer.
In the end, the Battle of Eltham's Landing is inconclusive. Brigadier General
I don't know. It seems like more of a Confederate victory.
Franklin has missed an excellent opportunity to intercept the Confederates' retreat and cut them off from their escape route towards Richmond, allowing them to fall back into their defensive works unhindered by the Federals. McClellan would have to continue his offensive against the Confederates overland across the peninsula.
What a video, guys. You know, it was a small little, skirmish that basically happened. I guess this is the battle, but Franklin tried to do something tactically and to surround the Confederates, and really, like I said, they were either going to have to hastily leave this area or surrender. I mean, maybe it was just something that was done off of an instinct, rather than strategy, but it didn't work. It didn't work. This is a Confederate victory for sure. But yeah, appreciate you guys as always. I'll see you guys next time. Peace out. All right, my fellow streaming watchers, how y'all doing? We have 3 videos to go. We have Every Time the United States Overthrew a Foreign Government by Mr. Beat. We have Rise of Macron. And then finishing it off with a Jay and Mark video, The World's Most Annoying Road. I will be back in like 60 seconds or less. So I'll be right back. Getting a little bit of snacks while I can.
Today, we're talking about
Stream looks like it's still working.
Today,
Good. Yeah. All right. Welcome back. It's time to do another video. Welcome back, everyone. Hope you're doing amazing. We have a Mr. Beat video upon us. This one is called Every Time the United States Overthrew a Foreign Government. There's probably more fingers. Sorry, I'm going to probably need some more fingers to count how many times we did that. We did that like just a second ago, too. Like 20 days ago. Let's jump right in. Mr. Beat.
Who's overthrowing governments? I'm not overthrowing governments.
My country is.
I'm Mr. Beat. Come on. Y'all know me. Still same old G. I ain't got time for that. But guess who has overthrown governments?
United States government.
The United States government. Like, a lot.
Regime change.
It's called regime change.
Is it in America's best interests to have regime change in Iran?
End these wasteful regime change wars.
President Trump now appearing to entertain the idea of a regime change in Iran, with Trump posting online, if the current Iranian regime is unable to make Iran great again, why wouldn't there be a regime change?
Oh, regime change? The United States definitely knew her.
A coup, which is short for coup d'etat, is a sudden, forceful, and illegal overthrow of a government.
We've done that a lot.
In this video, let's look at every time the United States...
Every time? Oh, man. I'm probably not going to know all these, but some of might.
States did a coup, or heavily influenced a coup.
How many times has the United States overthrown a foreign government?
Well, estimates range from 14 all the way up to more than 100.
So it depends on what we call an overthrow and how much influence we had.
According to my own estimates, there have been 26, at least 26 worth mentioning.
We have a bit of breaking news that has just come in. Right now, the Iranian state media is telling the people of Iran that the Ayatollah has been killed.
Oh, okay. According to my own estimates, there have been 27? At least 27 worth mentioning.
Obviously, this is very recent news, so we're kind of living in this with the death of the Ayatollah in Iran, and this is part of the regime change. Is it really regime change if the same government's in power? I don't know. I don't think that's what we would call regime change just because someone died. However, let's count it.
Yeah, I know. That's a lot. And these were the successful coups, not the ones that failed. Because there are so many, I'll keep it brief for each one. We'll break it up into 3.
Before he does it, I think there's going to be a lot of Eastern European, South American, Latin American, and Middle Eastern, and then maybe South Pacific, Eastern, Southeast Asia. That's probably where the main 4 areas of contention are.
Periods. The Imperial Expansion Era, the Cold War Era, and the War on Terrorism.
Okay. So we're going to be dealing with, people all the way from 93. So we're going to be looking at people like McKinley, Roosevelt, even into, I forget who's in 2024, Harding and so forth. And then we're going to take it from Truman up until George H.W. Bush. And then 1994 obviously is Clinton to present day Trump.
Era.
Alrighty then. Here's every time the United States overthrew a foreign government.
That is probably the worst particular sound effect you could have used, sir.
Oh, I should mention that we know of. Here's every time the United States overthrew a foreign government that we know of.
Chronologically speaking?
So far.
Okay, so we're going to chronologically. I like that.
During the imperialism expansion era, the United States was a bit more brazen with their imperialism. They didn't try to hide it.
I mean, nobody really tried to hide it then. This was just trying to match Europe. This is where we got to start. Hawaii. With the Queen, overthrowing the Queen.
On January 17th, 1893, American and European businessmen, with aid from the United States military, overthrew Queen Liliuokalani because her Hawaii First policy basically threatened their profits. Now, many don't realize the United States didn't annex
Did they have an isolationist policy, similar like to Japan in 1850 whatever?
The islands until more than 5 years later. In the meantime, these business leaders just started their own government there. As you probably already know, Hawaii eventually became a state, but the overthrow of the
in 1959.
Hawaiian Kingdom remains one of the most controversial land grabs in
49?
American history. Over the next several decades, the United States went bananas with the Banana Wars.
Banana republics down in Latin America.
A series of American interventions in Central America and islands in the Caribbean Sea.
Most famous, Honduras.
Hold on, I gotta take this. Hello? No. No. The name Banana Wars was popularized by a historian named Lester Langley, who wrote multiple books on American intervention in Latin America, and he called them that since many of these interventions protected the United Fruit Company.
Something that's still in, it's still out there today.
Which made a lot of money off of, you guessed it, bananas.
Colombia. Okay.
In 1903, after Colombia wouldn't let the United States build a canal through this part of their territory, the United States government encouraged Panamanian rebels who lived in the area to declare independence. The American
That's right, because Colombia used to have Panama, obviously. That's something that's such an interesting fact.
President at the time, Theodore Roosevelt, sent warships to block Colombian troops from stopping the revolt. And yep, after the Panamanians gained independence, the new country of Panama almost immediately signed a favorable canal treaty with the United States.
Such a vulnerable people.
Also in 1903,
this is what I was talking about. The Banana Republic. This is where you get that from.
the United States military supported a coup by Manuel Bonilla, who was more friendly to American business interests like the aforementioned United Fruit Company. Over the following years, the American military would repeatedly protect Bonilla from other attempted coups. Ah, yes, Honduras, the original Banana Republic.
Cuba, this was, of course, Spanish-American War. And
well, the United States originally acquired Cuba after defeating another imperial power, Spain, in the Spanish-American War. At first, the United States promised Cuba they'd have independence. But then the Americans, just wouldn't...
Yeah, this is how long... Think about it. Trump said this 3 days ago, that he's going to be able to be one of the first presidents to have Cuba. And this has been 126 years in the making of Cuban sovereignty being threatened by the United States. It's crazy. And even before that, it was obviously threatened by Spain. What a wild roller coaster.
Go away. Congress passed the Platt Amendment, which said the United States could intervene anytime it wanted to against a government it did not approve of.
Crazy, man.
And it did just that.
Is that specific to the Monroe Doctrine, or is that specific to anything?
The American military hung around Cuba until 1909. Hey, speaking of 1909.
Nicaragua.
That year, the United States helped overthrow President Jose Santos Zelaya because he wanted to build a canal across the country that competed with...
That's such a great, you know, this is just greed at that point, right? This is just greed, which greed, if greed is one of the 7 deadly sins, right? So if we took away greed from the world, how life might have been.
With the Panama Canal. And yeah, Zelaya threatened American business interests. American soldiers would support rebels and ended up occupying the country on and off for the next 2 decades. I hate to break it to you, but every time this about they end out there, mystery.com during this video.
Mexico. Okay, this is the Mexican Revolution that turns into something of itself. This is also one of the first places where you see aerial warfare by the United States.
In 1913,
with planes,
Henry Lane Wilson, the U.S. ambassador to Mexico, and of no relation to his boss.
Yeah, I was about to say, is there any relation there?
President Woodrow Wilson was very involved helping overthrow the democratically elected president of Mexico, Francisco Madero, who threatened American oil interests. Well, Woodrow Wilson would end up firing Henry Lane Wilson, but he kept American forces there anyway after continued instability in the country over the next few years in what became known as the Mexican Revolution.
All right. Just 5 years later, Haiti.
In 1915, American troops straight up invaded and occupied Haiti.
So far, everything's been in the Western Hemisphere. So far.
After a mob killed the country's president, Vilbren Sam. You see, American banks had lent a lot of money to Haiti, and they wanted the American military to get that money back. Hey, eyes down here, buddy. Why are you staring at my forehead anyway?
Why'd you put it up there,
pervert? Bro? The Americans disbanded Haiti's army and controlled local politics in the country for years.
That's a crazy photo, bro.
Years.
Now we're in the Dominican Republic, the other side of Hispaniola. I said that probably wrong.
On May 15th, 1916, American troops landed in Haiti's neighbor to the east, the Dominican Republic, to, quote, restore order, and then promptly ran the government. Well, the real reason why they were there was to protect an American-owned sugarcane plantation.
A plantation with indentured servants?
They sidelined locally elected leaders and installed American-friendly military leaders in their place. The United States military would occupy the Dominican Republic until September 18th, 1924.
You don't hear about that. So 9 years, 8 years of doing that?
Hey, Matt. Che Guerrero here, fellow content creator and Dominican who can speak a little more in depth about this topic if you don't mind.
Of course, of course.
Thanks.
This is cool. I like the crossovers.
Thanks. The American military had actually previously intervened in the Dominican Republic in 1903. Due to the multiple rebellions, the United States sent naval ships to protect American property and interest in the nation. They left shortly after, but returned several times, such as in 1914, when the Navy intervened to stop another rebellion and oversee the next elections. Fun fact, if you can call it that, during this era, FDR was a key architect of Wilson-era
yeah, he looks young there.
Naval occupations in the Caribbean, setting up the Dominican Constabulary and the Hyena training schools that shaped the military career of DR's longest-serving dictator, Rafael Trujillo. I'll be back later, just like the US, because the US comes back after we stop Trujillo.
Thanks, Che. You can imagine.
Oh, wow. Stuff we never knew.
Imagine this led to a lot of anti-American sentiment throughout Latin America. Well, props to the American presidents Calvin Coolidge, Herbert Hoover, and Franklin Roosevelt, who mostly ended regime changes.
Oh, that's interesting.
Hoover and FDR, in particular, implemented what became known as the Good Neighbor policy, in which the United States pledged to respect the sovereignty of its...
Wasn't Hoover, we watched the video the other day on the Boxer Rebellion, Hoover was in China during a lot of like the craziness, so maybe that kind of like, you know, instilled some interesting morality to him, seeing firsthand what that looked like.
Neighbors and avoid direct military intervention in Latin America. No more military occupations. But then World War II happened, and
The Cold War era. So we're starting with Truman here in 1953. No, we're starting with Eisenhower.
during the Cold War, the United States got more sneaky with the coups, and of course it was all in the name of stopping the spread of...
Bro, it's just eating the banana now.
Communism. This is a little ripe.
Of course, one of the most infamous places in the world. Here we go. We did it before.
Yeah, this one's a bit more famous. In 1953, after Iran's democratically elected Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh nationalized British-controlled oil...
They didn't like that. And this is heavily, this is heavily not just the United States, but also the United Kingdom involved in this.
Hurting American companies, the Central Intelligence Agency, or CIA, as well as the MI6, the
MI6 is
British Secret Intelligence Service, paid mobs, bribed officials, and spread propaganda to cause chaos in the country. Eventually, they aided in a straight-up coup of Mossadegh, replacing him with Mohammad Reza Pahlavi,
the Shah.
A king more friendly to American business interests. Pahlavi would rule with an iron fist, and the people of Iran would eventually revolt against him in what became known as the Iranian Revolution. Which
is literally kind of like the breadcrumbs of where we're at today. With 1953, this happens, and the Shah is instilled, and then as absolute power. And then in 1979, obviously the Ayatollah takes over, because literally a year later, the Shah dies. And then we have two Ayatollahs since 79, and now we're on our third.
Led to the Iranian hostage crisis.
I don't think we've done that video. We got to do it soon.
Oh, yeah.
Especially since we're talking Iran so much recently.
I have a video about that.
Guatemala. Now this is really, I believe, this might have to be done during the Cold War. Obviously, that's what we're talking about. But this probably has to do more about that domino theory of communism spreading into our hemisphere. Let's see what it was.
In 1954, Guatemala's president, Jacobo Arbenz, began to take unused property from the aforementioned United Fruit Company to give it to poor farmers.
Oh, we can't have that. We can't have reforms.
In response, the CIA aided rebels, ran radio psyops, and bombed targets to scare Arbenz into resigning.
That's crazy, bro.
This was actually the second time the United States tried to overthrow their government. The first time, 2 years prior, was unsuccessful. A military dictatorship followed, sparking decades of civil war and mass killings.
The DRC, okay, so we're finally going somewhere. I mean, we did talk about Iran in 1953, but now we're in Africa for the first time. 1960. This is going to be Eisenhower still in 1960. Kennedy will take over in 61.
In 1960, after the Congo gained independence from Belgium, citizens there elected Patrice Lumumba as their prime minister. Well, the United States feared he was a bit too friendly with the Soviet Union.
And this is all in the name of proxy warfare, probably.
The CIA would help Belgium assassinate him. And eventually, the dictator, Mobutu Sese Seko, took over and terrorized the country for more than 30 years.
How many times does this happen before we learn our lesson? All right, now we're back at the Dominican Republic, of course.
On May 30th, 1961, rebels ambushed and assassinated Rafael Trujillo, the dictator of the Dominican Republic. And guess who supplied weapons to the people who assassinated him?
The CIA?
The CIA.
The CIA. Always playing both sides. Hi, Che again. Missed me? In 1963, the Dominican Republic held elections and Juan Bosch came into power as president of the Dominican Republic as part of the Dominican Revolutionary Party. This made the conservatives on the island very nervous. They saw Bosch taking land from the rich landowners,
similar to what we just saw in Guatemala,
creating a more liberal and less secular constitution, and allowing the Communist Party to grow. Also, and most importantly, limiting the power of the military. That last one was the nail on the coffin for Bosch's presidency. This led to the far right of the Dominican Republic removing Bosch in what they called a bloodless coup, which replaced him with a military junta. This led to a civil.
This is interesting. It's almost like in the Roman times when, you had a leader that did not pay respect to the bodyguard, the Imperial Guard. My brain is all over the place right now, so I can't remember the name of what that's called. But you guys know what I'm talking about if you know what I'm talking about. It's crazy.
War in April 1965. Side note, my grandmother was born in the Dominican Republic in 1933, 3 years into Trujillo's dictatorship. When the Civil War broke out and it seemed like Bosch was going to come back into power, she remembers having hope that her country can have a real people's revolution. However, my grandma's hopes, like millions of others, were dashed when the U.S. intervened in the Civil War and imposed a political transition that first led to a provisional president, Hector Garcia Godoy, and then to the election of Joaquin Balaguer.
So I'm guessing this election was 1000% messed with.
Who was Trujillo's vice president.
Oh, that's not sus at all.
Balaguer was president of the Dominican Republic in 1988, when I was born in the Dominican Republic, and stopped being president in 1996. My first 8 years of life were under a dictator that the U.S. helped install, just like the one my grandmother lived under that the U.S. helped install.
What do they say? History repeats itself.
I am living proof that the damage that the U.S. has inflicted in Latin America is not such ancient history.
Wow. All right, we're back in South America. Well, I don't know. Have we been in South America yet? Yeah, we were with Colombia. So we're in Ecuador now.
After Jose Maria Velasco Ibarra, the president of Ecuador, got a little too friendly with communist Cuba, the CIA used propaganda, forged documents, and straight-up bribery to overthrow him on November 7th, 1961.
Oh, those Bay of Pigs have already occurred. The Cuban-Soviet-American relations are horrendous. So we're going to try to make sure there's no supporting adversaries out there.
2 years later, anti-communist rebels within Ecuador overthrew the next president, Carlos Julio Arosemena Monroy, after he too was a bit too friendly with Cuba.
Iraq in 1963. So we did Iran 10 years earlier. Now it's Iraq.
There is growing evidence that the CIA also helped plan and carry out the overthrow of Abdul Karim Qasim, who was then executed by firing squad on February 9th, 1963. Qasim had been open to closer ties to the Soviet Union.
That'll do it. That's a death sentence, man.
And communism.
How many times, this just is so evident. One thing he's not saying is what happened next. A lot of these are obviously, people getting overthrown or things happening to certain nations, but what happens in some of these were explained, like the Dominican Republic, but for a lot of these, what actually happened? And we know about Iran, but I'm gonna go back again.
There is growing evidence that the CIA also helped plan and carry out the overthrow of Abdul Karim Qasim, who was then executed by firing squad on February 9th, 1963. Qasim had been open to closer ties to the Soviet Union and communism.
So, okay. Whatever happened next. Brazil.
After Brazil's president, João Goulart, pushed for land reform,
It's always land reform. Golly.
And more worker rights. This freaked out, you guessed it, American business interests. In early 1964, the United States provided logistics and military aid to help rebels overthrow Goulart and install a harsh military dictatorship which would rule for the next 21 years.
So this all started in the Gilded Age, and it's just exacerbated since the Cold War. Guyana, another South American country.
The CIA helped Britain overthrow Cheddi Jagan, the chief minister of what was...
Because this used to be British territory, I believe.
British Guiana at the time. After Jagan got elected, he became a bit too cozy with Marxism and the Soviet Union.
It's always the same thing. These are all proxies to the Soviet Union. Another South American country.
After Bolivia's president, Juan Jose Torres, became friendly with Cuba and
it's always one of the two.
Nationalized the country's mines, the CIA gave intelligence and other aid to rebels. On August 21st, 1971,
of course, this is a POV from Mr. Beat and his research and probably a lot of other objective sources, but very curious to see if there was other variables at play for these people to be overthrown. Besides cozying up to communism.
His rebels ultimately overthrew Torres and replaced him with Hugo Banzer, who, you guessed it also, would rule Bolivia as a brutal dictator for the next 7 years. Although strangely later in the 1990s, he'd returned to power after Bolivians elected him.
That's happened before, way more than you think. Elected him, by the way, quote unquote. Maybe. Another South American country. So the domino effect in the Western Hemisphere was averted thanks to the CIA.
Well, Chileans elected a socialist named...
And you already screwed up. You already screwed up, Chile.
Salvador Allende as their president after he nationalized the copper mines and threatened American business interests. The CIA caused chaos by disrupting the economy and giving millions of dollars to rebels for them to conduct military strikes. On September 11th, 1973, Chilean military rebels bombed the palace and killed Allende.
My God.
Augusto Pinochet took over as a brutal dictator and would routinely torture and disappear citizens over the next 17 years.
How is that any better? It's all rooted in greed, as you guys know.
Yeah, I think these are starting to sound redundant.
Grenada.
On October 25th, 1983, the United States military, along with a coalition of 6 different Caribbean countries, straight up invaded the country of Grenada to
Is it Grenada or Grenada? I don't know.
overthrow its Marxist government. Officially, President Ronald Reagan said the invasion was to protect American medical students, but we now know the main goal was actually to stop Soviet influence. The United States installed a more American-friendly government. Most of the world condemned the invasion of Grenada, but most Americans actually approved of it at the time.
Well, it's all about propaganda and concerning the citizens, you know? You don't want to actually tell them the reason. Panama. Oh, Oriega. Is that Oriega? Oriega? I think it's Oriega. Daniel Oriega.
On December 20th, 1989, President George H.W. Bush sent thousands of American troops to overthrow and arrest Manuel
Noriega. This feels very similar to like Maduro.
Noriega, a former CIA asset turned drug-running dictator. Operation Just Cause.
Yep, that's what it was called. It's called what?
No, seriously, that's what the United States called it. Operation Just Cause.
Yep.
Noriega had become a bit too defiant and was threatening American interests near the Panama Canal. It was a quick, somewhat massive military operation that lasted less than 6 weeks and ended with Noriega in an American prison. But by then, the Cold War was winding down, bringing...
Yeah, like 2 years later. So we should be entering the age of the war on terrorism.
Taking us to a new era.
Putin is a war criminal, and that reminds me. Happy 20th anniversary. Oh my. Haiti. Again.
Operation Uphold Democracy. No, seriously, the United States called it Operation Uphold Democracy. So cringe, bruh. In 1994, President Bill Clinton sent 25,000 troops to, quote, convince Haitian military leaders under the command.
Convince with what force? That's not convincing. That's trying to start a war.
Of Joseph Raul Cedras to step down without a fight. In his place returned Jean-Bertrand Aristide, who was overthrown 3 years prior, despite being democratically elected. It was a rare case of the United States intervening to restore a democracy it liked. What's also interesting about this coup was that there is some evidence that suggests the CIA may have helped Aristide be overthrown the first time. Oops. On
I mean, CIA plays both sides always. We already know that.
February 29th, 2004, military rebels overthrew Aristide from power again, and he and others later accused the United States for playing a role in it. But then 9/11 happened, and everything changed.
Yes, it did. The good war is what we call the Afghanistan coup. Let's see what happens in his analysis there.
On September 11th, 2001, a group known as Al-Qaeda hijacked 4 airplanes to launch coordinated terrorist suicide attacks on American soil, known as the September 11th attacks, or simply 9/11, which I have a video about.
We haven't done that either. Something we got to do in the future.
Duh. In response to these horrific attacks, the United States invaded Afghanistan to topple the Taliban regime because they were harboring Al-Qaeda. The United States teamed up with the Northern Alliance, a group of Afghan rebels, to quickly take control of the country. This began the longest war in American history.
20 years.
The war in Afghanistan, which ended with the Taliban returning to power in 2021.
It's cyclical. It's cyclical. Venezuela, 2002.
On April 11th, 2002, rebels overthrew Venezuela's president, Hugo Chavez. There is some evidence that American diplomats helped organize it. However, the coup was short-lived. Like, really short-lived. Chavez was back in power within 48 hours.
Wow. Of course, this one's probably one of the most famous ones of all times, just because of what happens to Saddam and how this could have happened in 1990 or 89, one of the two.
On March 20th, 2003, American troops led an invasion of Iraq to overthrow Saddam Hussein, the country's brutal dictator. How did the United States justify this invasion? And
WMDs that were not found. There was no evidence of so. And yeah, and the other side of it was like, oh, Saddam Hussein's, you know, we don't want that. It's similar to like I guess Ecuador in the same video, where you have you know, the Taliban and Al-Qaeda more say in the region being operatives of terrorism, and Saddam Hussein, there is, you know, not empirical but anecdotal evidence that he is and they are somehow helping Al-Qaeda
overthrow? Well, President George W. Bush and his administration had claimed Saddam had weapons of mass destruction and ties to terrorists. No such weapons were ever found, but American soldiers did capture Saddam and eventually executed him. The invasion
invasion destabilized the entire region and led to a long, bloody insurgency. Oh, I also have a video about the Iraq War.
Of course you do. Libya, another recent one. Gaddafi. I don't know when he took over, but he took over a while ago.
In 2011, both American and NATO air power helped rebels overthrow the dictator Muammar Gaddafi.
Yeah.
And boy, did those rebels, yeah, they took care of him. Sure, the mission was officially to, quote, protect civilians, but it just quickly turned into yet another regime change operation.
And Libya's always been a mess in terms of their divide, all the way since the Scramble of Africa, just because of the lines that were drawn and different ethnic groups in that region. There has not been a centralized authority, which has created this, you know, toil of systems since then.
Libya fragmented into rival governments and has basically been in constant chaos ever since.
Really, ever since like the 1880s, 1890s, even, well, I mean, there was some sort of like control during occupation, but even after that.
And here's some very recent history.
Recent? Yeah, like I was in this like January 3rd or something like that.
On January 3rd, 2026, American forces carried out a military strike in Venezuela that resulted in the capture of Venezuela's president, Nicolas Maduro, and his wife, Celia Flores. President Donald Trump announced that the United States would oversee a new government and is currently holding Maduro and Flores in prison as they await trial for illegal drug-related charges.
Similar to Noriega in terms of like, that's the parallel I'm drawing right there.
So that's it, I think.
No. Nope. Iran.
Oh crap, there's another one.
You might have to make a part 2 in the future.
Yep, literally as I was making this video, the United States and Israel launched strikes on Iran that killed Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and around 40 senior members of
And that's increased since then too.
the country's regime. Why? Well, I don't know if we have a good grasp as to why yet.
We don't.
But that's it. That's every time the United States overthrew a foreign government, I think. Yeah, I hope. I hope that's...
What? No.
Every time the United States has overthrown...
Wow. Well, what do you guys think? That's crazy, isn't it? There's going to be more times in the future, probably. But at the end of the day, we gotta figure out a way to learn from history, right? And obviously the United States is not the only culprit of ever doing this. This has happened forever, always, right? This has always been a thing in history. This particularly was around the United States. It seems like most of these were due to greed or Soviet proxy. Now, those were really the two main ones. The new world that we live in, where you have Venezuela and Iran, I don't know. Maybe there's more to it than meets the eye. But I'm open to hearing anyone out. I appreciate you guys as always. Until next time, peace out. All right, guys. Just 2 videos to go. We have the rise of Macron, Emmanuel Macron of France, and then a JMark video. I'm gonna take a chip break real quick. I'm gonna eat some chips. Hope you guys are doing okay. About to hit the 3-hour mark on the stream. And I was like 99% sure we weren't going to be able to do the stream today. Last chip. Last chip. All right. The rise of Macron. You guys ready? Are you ready? All right. Welcome back, everyone. Hope you guys are doing amazing. The rise of Macron, how a political outsider secured or shook France in 2017. Of course, we have Trump here, because that also happened in 2017. So, interesting parallels. Macron has ruled for like 9 or 10 years at this point. Let's see what's going on. Let's jump right in, shall we?
The world's political landscape was changing in the late 2010s. In 2016, Donald Trump was elected president of the United States, defying all of the polls. In 2018, Andrés Manuel López Obrador became the new president of Mexico after forming his new Morena party. And in 2017, Emmanuel Macron, who had just formed his own political party just a year earlier, dominated the French presidential election.
Wow, I didn't know that. He formed his own party.
However, Macron's win was different. While Trump had been well known in the United States for nearly 40 years, and Obrador had been involved in Mexican politics for decades, as well as a twice failed presidential candidate, Macron seemingly came from nowhere. In France's previous election,
Sometimes that helps, not having a track record.
He had only been involved as an advisor and campaign worker for François Hollande, the socialist candidate who would go on to win the presidency. Before that, he had been involved in consulting, as well as involved with investment banking, but he wasn't really public at all. Sure, he dabbled in some political campaigns in the past, but not in any senior role where he would have been known publicly. He really did come out of nowhere.
Wow.
So how did this happen? Today, we're going to look at the 2017 French presidential election and the dominoes that fell that allowed an obscure former presidential advisor to become president of France. Hello, welcome to Election History. My name is Dave, and I look at the history of campaigns, elections, candidates, political parties, and so on. If you like videos on these topics...
Yeah, really good channel. Go check out Election History. I think we've only done one video prior. We did like the 1988 presidential election, but still, great channel. I'm hoping to do more.
Please subscribe to the channel and hit the little bell notification to be updated about upcoming videos. Now, let's delve into today's video. In 1983, Jean-Pierre Chevènement left France's Socialist Party to form his own political party called the Republican Pole, a political party that sought to bring those on the left together who didn't want to support the current Socialist Party led by Lionel Jospin. He argued that France had...
And by the way, TLDR, I do not know anything about French politics, so this is all going to be new to me.
A bipolar political system which needed to have more pluralistic elections. In 2002, he competed in the presidential election with his party renamed the Citizens Movement. As a result, Lionel Jospin would finish third in the first round of the presidential election, missing the runoff. Far-right candidate Jean-Marie Le Pen would finish second, though he only increased his first-round vote by 1.2% compared to the previous election. Jospin had lost 7.1% of his vote. To put it in perspective, the Citizens Movement won 5.3% of the vote. One of those who supported the Citizens Movement was a young university student named Emmanuel Macron.
Wow, so that's where he gets his start. Okay.
Years later, Macron said that he thought that the Socialist Party failed because it was unable to discuss security issues. Chevènement was considered a radical centrist, taking extreme views on the left and right, essentially making him a centrist. Therefore, some of his vote might have gone to Chirac as well, but chances are that enough of his vote would have gone to Jospin to push Jospin into the second round. One of the things that became abundantly clear after Jospin's defeat was that the socialists had lost their former left-wing support, as many saw the party moving away from its socialist namesake and drifting into liberalism. The party, with Francois Hollande now as the party leader, tried to strike a balance between the left and right. And
so they just couldn't. Were they just trying to do too much?
And while the party did shift more leftward, it wasn't enough to satisfy everyone on the left, with many on the far left leaving over the next few years. While the right and the Socialist Party were also not exactly thrilled, they felt that their home was more likely to be in the Socialist Party than with their main rivals, the Republicans. The next presidential election was in 2007, with Ségolène Royal, the partner of Francois Hollande, being selected as the party's presidential candidate. Royal was more of a compromiser and didn't have a strong ideological background, though many called her a true socialist. If she were to make it past the first round, the question would be whether other parties would support her in the second round. If Royal got
So there's different rounds. Okay.
Not the support of the far left parties, it might scare a lot of the centrist voters who had been comfortable voting for the Republicans over the last 12 years. If she were able to get the support of the centrists, then the left might abstain from the election, but Royal could win. One of those pushing for the latter was Emmanuel Macron, who advocated for François Bayrou, the leader of the centrist Union for French Democracy Party, to support Royal in the second round. After the first round of the election...
So you mentioned Macron's support, but what is he, a private citizen? What is he doing in 2007?
In which Royal finished second, the left parties immediately lined up behind Royal, while Bayrou didn't support Royal. She would go on to lose the second round with 47% of the vote, and with that, the socialists were back to the drawing board. With that, let's talk about the Republic.
Wow. Okay, so a couple of districts in Paris, but besides that, not much support.
Republicans a little bit. Ségolène Royal lost to Nicolas Sarkozy, the Minister of the Interior under Jacques Chirac. When he entered office, he had the highest approval rating since Charles de Gaulle. But soon after being elected, his popularity started to drop massively. Interestingly,
sometimes that's just what happens.
Wasn't because of his policies, though some were controversial, but because of his appearance, often being seen as ostentatious. He came across as being a playboy instead of a world leader. With his divorce from...
I mean, this happens more often than not, where the substance matter goes more personal than policy.
His second wife to marry famous French singer Carla Bruni as an example. Even though there was some shady stuff going down, like considering the appointment of his son to a government position, he also had to deal with the 2008 financial crisis, as well as a number of international conflicts in which he took an interventionist approach. As with the socialists, there were also rifts within the Republicans. See, in France, the role of Prime Minister and the National Assembly is actually to be the government for the nation, which makes the Prime Minister, who at this time was François Fillon,
head of government.
The head of government.
Yeah.
The President is the head of state, but has sweeping powers over the National Assembly, such as being able to appoint a new Prime Minister. While the president has these powers, the legislative branch was seen as having a strong level of autonomy. But Sarkozy wanted to change this relationship, making the prime minister simply a yes man for the president.
So increasing the executive branch's power.
In fact, when asked about it, Sarkozy said that, quote, "The prime minister is the collaborator, I'm the boss. I'm paid to decide, I decide."
Okay.
This is what the French media at the time would call a hyper-presidency. But François Fillon, who had actually advocated for a stronger presidency years earlier, now had a change of heart since he was the prime minister. In fact, Fillon began to distance himself from those in the National Assembly away from Sarkozy, mostly by introducing legislation and stating things publicly that irritated Sarkozy. By the end of 2007, Fillon became more popular than Sarkozy, according to the public opinion polls. But there were also disagreements among electoral tactics within the party, with the rise of the far-right National Front in the 2011 Canton elections, which gained 10.2% of the vote, while the Republicans lost 9% of the vote. Discussions started as to whether the Republicans should side with the Socialists or the National Front candidates in places where the Republicans didn't make the runoff. Fillon supported the idea of the Republicans supporting the Socialist Party candidate, while others in the party called for supporting the National Front. Rumor has it that Sarkozy actually preferred the latter choice, the National Front. As for the Socialists, there were some tensions as well. Both Ségolène Royal, the last presidential candidate for the Socialists, and François Hollande, the party leader and Royal's partner, had a very public breakup, which led to a fracture in the party.
Okay.
In 2008, Hollande decided not to run for party leader, instead backing Bertrand Delanoë, the mayor of Paris at the time. Delanoë lost to Lille mayor Martine Aubry. Being on the outs with the party,
so many names to keep up with. Like I said, don't know too much about French politics. So let me know in the comments if there's any particular name that pops off the page to you that we should dive deeper into.
Hollande, who had always intended to run for president, announced on March 31st, 2011 that he was running in the 2012 presidential election, with one of his earliest supporters being Emmanuel Macron. This was a daring move, as Martine Aubry and Dominique Strauss-Kahn were dominating the polls for the nomination. Aubry would go on to endorse Strauss-Kahn on May 3rd. However, 11 days later, Strauss-Kahn was arrested in New York City on sexual assault charges, thus killing his chances to be the Socialist Party candidate.
Yeah, that'll do it. That'll end your career right there. As we know more than that at ever. I can't talk. We know more about that than ever in the 21st century, especially the 2020s, what we've seen with the Epstein stuff.
While not officially announcing until June 28th, Aubry indicated that she would essentially take over from Strauss-Kahn. There weren't too many sparks in the primary, though. Aubry,
he's given a lot of context to the background of this too,
said that it was the media who had created Hollande as a serious candidate. Ségolène Royal, who was also a minor candidate for the nomination, said that Hollande had never had any real experience in governing previously, and that his time as the Socialist Party leader saw a number of heavy losses. But in the first round, Hollande won 39.2% of the vote, with Aubry winning 30.4% of the votes. Of those who didn't make it to the second round, Royal, Manuel Valls, and Jean-Michel Baillet all endorsed Hollande. As a result, Hollande easily won the second round on October 16th with 56.6% of the vote. As for
there's not like huge lopsided second round victory so far.
Sarkozy, he announced that he would run for re-election a few months later on February 15th, 2012. By this time, his popularity plummeted, and many political insiders thought that Sarkozy might finish third behind the socialist candidate and the National Front, now run by Jean-Marie Le Pen's daughter, Marine Le Pen. Some polls had shown that if Aubry or Royal had been the nominee for the Socialists, that Le Pen could finish second in the first round of the presidential election. But once Hollande was selected, Le Pen significantly fell behind both Hollande and Sarkozy.
So she got third place.
With a number of good campaign appearances, Sarkozy's image started to recover. Hollande would go on to win the first round of the election with 28.6% of the vote, but Sarkozy wasn't far behind with 27.8%. Marine Le Pen was a distant third at 17.9%. In the second round of the election, Sarkozy didn't find a lot of electoral support amongst those defeated in the first round. Of course, the parties on the left told their supporters to vote for Hollande, but the parties on the right didn't give any indication as to how their voters should vote, particularly Marine Le Pen's National Front Party. Hollande won the election with 51.6% of the vote, making the election much closer than expected.
So he'll roll for the next 4 years until 2017. I'm guessing 5 years.
This was the first time that a socialist had won the presidency since François Mitterrand back in 1988. As for the Republicans, François Fillon was selected the party's new leader after the election. Upon assuming the presidency, François Hollande appoints Emmanuel Macron as Deputy Secretary General.
So that's where he gets his start really into politics. But he's kind of like an advisor before that.
Of the Elysee, which is part of the presidential team. Many in the
like a cabinet
media were interested in Macron, who hadn't been well known until then. They were interested in seeing how a 34-year-old,
wow,
who hardly anybody knew, became part of the...
So he's in his 40s now, if he's 34 in 2012. He's 46? Sorry, 48?
The inner circle of the French president. As for Hollande, it was a rough start to his presidency. He wasn't someone who knew how to govern, and thus was attacked from the left, right, and center. The left said that he was giving too much away to businesses, with the right saying that he was pressuring businesses too much. All agreed that his governing led to a lack of quality government. Macron had been one of those in his inner circle that had been pushing Hollande to move the party further to the right on economic issues, but Hollande rejected Macron's recommendations. Macron would eventually resign his position at the
Oh, so this kind of creates like his own path.
Elysee. Yes, he had been given a seat at the table of the French president, but he felt that he had no influence and was being ignored by Hollande. At this time, the Socialist Prime Minister was Manuel Valls. Valls had recommended that Macron should be appointed as the budget minister. However, Hollande rejected the idea because Macron had never been elected to public office.
I mean, both are fair. Like, these are not bad, assumptions by either side.
Still, Macron was appointed Minister of the Economy and Industry in Valls' reconstructed second government on August 26, 2014. Without getting into the specifics of his time as minister, Macron was able to become a public figure, becoming more and more recognizable to the public. But 2015 became a turning point for Macron. The relationship between Macron and Valls had started to strain, mostly because Valls had turned down legislation drafted by Macron. Macron continued to see himself on the outs with the government, especially when in late 2015 he said that he was no longer a member of the Socialist Party.
So this is going to probably be the breadcrumbs to making his own party.
That had actually been true since 2009 when he stopped paying his party membership dues. But in all fairness to Macron, he wasn't really a true supporter of the Socialist Party. On April 6, 2016, Macron started his own political party called...
What? When did he do it?
On April 6, 2016,
okay,
Macron started his own political party called En Marche. However, the wheels had been rolling
on Marche.
On a Macron political movement for some time. In June of 2015, nearly a year earlier, Macron supporters created a website and Facebook group called Les Jeunes avec Macron, which tapped into the young socialist movement, giving Macron a base of support for any future political move. They would also expand their support by reaching out to socialists who were disillusioned with Francois Hollande, mostly those who had...
So basically taking from the base that he could, but also hedging against that base.
...had been supporting Dominique Strauss-Kahn
kind of smart
before his scandal. This gave En Marche both financial backing...
Gives him very much a grassroots effort and a populist effort this way.
...as well as a strong grassroots organization.
He just said what I said.
Macron remained minister for a few more months, but when Hollande said that he needed to serve as minister without talking about any presidential ambitions, he resigned on August 30th, 2016 to focus on building En Marche. In the first polls conducted after his resignation, Macron's party polled between 16% and 20%, well ahead of Francois Hollande, who was hovering around 13%.
So just like that, you have like... That's enough, ammunition to get you to keep going.
The Republicans, who had yet to pick their candidate, performed slightly better than Macron, anywhere between 20% and 35%. But the party...
That's a big difference, though.
...with the most significant lead in the polls was Marine Le Pen's National Front Party, anywhere between 28% and 30%. Marine Le Pen was elected as leader of the National Front in 2011, replacing her father Jean-Marie Le Pen. During her leadership campaign, she sought to distance herself from her father, thus wanting to make a bigger tent of the party. She would, and still does, reject her party's labeling as an extreme right party, saying that the party's beliefs fall within the mainstream of political discourse.
It's probably optics then, if that's the issue.
One way she did this was by rejecting right-wing extremist parties like Golden Dawn a neo-Nazi party in Greece. In 2014,
Yet neo-Nazi parties probably won't fare well in France.
the National Front did well in local,
even though I know this is probably an optic issue, like I said,
and European elections. The party also started to see a rise in support of those under 35 years old. Much of this had to do with the party encouraging younger voters to be part of the internal affairs of the party, with one of those being a young Jordan Bardella, the leader of the party today. One might assume that the National Front might have been doing well in the first round just because of the terrorist attacks that had happened in 2015, but these events really didn't affect the party's numbers positively or negatively. But while they were doing well in the first round polls, the same couldn't be said about the second round. Le Pen was losing to all of the main potential presidential candidates in the second round by a substantial margin.
Yeah. So Juppé, I'm guessing, is the Republican candidate.
Except for one, that being the current president.
I mean, that's not a big win then, I guess.
President Francois Hollande. Before we continue the video, if you aren't subscribed to the channel and you like this video, please subscribe to the channel and click the little bell to be informed about new videos. You can also become a member of the channel by clicking join below, or you can join my Patreon. I have just started both, and here are our members so far.
You
can join them and get early releases as well as members-only exclusive videos, such as the most recent video about Bill Clinton's Sister Soldier moment. With that, I want to thank everyone who has supported the channel.
Yeah, this was a very interesting moment in the 90s.
So far. Now, back to this video.
All right.
There had always been talk that Hollande would only be a one-term president since his public approval numbers were low and that his 2012 election was simply seen as opposing Sarkozy. When it came to the presidential matchup polls, the Socialist Party performed poorly, with former socialist Jean-Luc Mélenchon constantly ahead of Hollande. It wasn't just the case that Hollande was not making it to the second round, but that he might not even be the top choice amongst voters on the left. And with Macron taking away votes from the right, the Socialist Party was kind of in a tight squeeze.
You're kind of screwed at that point.
With that, on December 1st, 2016, Hollande declared that he would not seek the presidency for a second term.
He probably just saw the writing on the wall, and he wanted to not tarnish his brand any further.
As a result, Benoît Hamon would be selected as the Socialist Party's candidate. The selection of Hamon represented a strong leftward shift in the party, with he and Jean-Luc Mélenchon seeing eye to eye on many issues. But unlike previous elections, where the Socialist Party would ask smaller leftist parties to withdraw so that a right-wing candidate didn't win, it was Mélenchon who was asking Hamon's Socialist Party to drop out. Had Hamon dropped out, it is highly likely that Mélenchon would have made it to the second round. However, polls showed that Mélenchon would lose by 20% to Macron, but would have beaten Le Pen by between 11 and 20%. Mélenchon would have also beaten any Republican candidate by a large margin as well.
It's just certain people are stealing certain votes.
Still, there were rumors in the French media that Hamon had actually been working with Macron to create a possible alliance.
Ooh, conspiracy.
But all parties rejected these rumors. As for the Republicans, they needed to pick their presidential candidate, and there were a number of candidates to be the nominee. The first was François Fillon, the prime minister under Nicolas Sarkozy. The second was Sarkozy himself, taking another crack at it. Third was Alain Juppé, the former prime minister.
And this is who they go with.
Under Jacques Chirac,
right?
As well as holding a number of portfolios under Fillon's government. The fourth name of importance was Bruno Le Maire, a popular Republican politician who had been eyeing the presidency for a while. Going into the primary, Juppé and Sarkozy were considered the two candidates who would make it to the next round, each with about 35% of the support. Fillon and Le Maire were significantly behind, with Le Maire around 15% and Fillon around 13% overall. But the polls were absolutely wrong, as Fillon would win 44% of the vote in the first round, with Juppé finishing a distant second with 29%. Sarkozy and Le Maire would throw their support behind Fillon, who would win the second round on November 27th with 66% of the vote. But 2 months after Fillon was selected, the candidate was enveloped in a scandal. It had been reported on February
That sucks for them.
17th that Penelope Fillon, Francois Fillon's wife, had been paid over 500,000 euros as his parliamentary attaché, though she hadn't done any work for that money. 1 week later, on February 24th, the government launched an investigation into the allegations, with Fillon being indicted on charges of embezzlement of public funds 18 days later on March 14th. He would also be investigated for taking bribes in the form of several $1,000s worth of suits.
Well, golly.
While the campaign went on, there were rumblings within the Republican movement about replacing Fillon with either Juppé or another Republican, but that didn't happen. In fact, his campaign, as well as the Republicans, had been taken over by a far-right family values organization. While Fillon was under investigation, his rhetoric became conspiratorial, focusing on how charges against him were driven by the media and Francois Hollande. He even went as far as asking prosecutors to investigate others in the government, saying he had proof of corruption, but he wouldn't release the information until after the election. These allegations went nowhere.
Obviously, they're just, a smoking mirror.
Marine Le Pen also had issues with scandals. 6 legal cases had been put against her party. Many of those stem from a situation similar to Fillon's, in which the National Front created fictitious positions that were paid for by the European Union. Along with a number of other issues regarding her party and her party's activities in the European Union, she had also lost her parliamentary immunity, which allowed the courts to investigate her activities without being able to claim immunity due to her capacity as a member of the European Parliament. 1 month before the first round of the election, Le Pen was polling at around 27%, but 2 days before
We're talking a lot about these other candidates, but what's happening with Macron?
For the first round, her numbers dropped to around 22%. On March 18, 2017, the Constitutional Council published the names of the 11 candidates for president. With the first polls being released, it was apparently clear that Macron and Le Pen were to be the top 2 candidates in the first round.
Okay.
He
came out of nowhere for sure.
For Macron, one of his closest rivals for the center vote, Francois Bayrou, decided not to run for president and endorse Macron. While he had only been polling around 5% in the pre-election polls, Bayrou's numbers could be just enough to push Macron over the top, especially in a crowded field. As for Fillon, the scandal was sucking most of the support from his campaign, with almost everyone expecting him to lose.
Yes. Macron going off into the sunset, but this was his rise to fame.
In the first round.
From a budget minister to the head of the minister of the economy. And so now, a candidate that's leading the polls in 2017.
Much of the support that peeled away from Fillon went to Macron. In the months before the first round of voting, Macron was leading in the polls with around 25% of the vote. With the exception of scandals, the campaign itself wasn't really eventful. There were 3 debates scheduled, but only 2 took place, as Jean-Luc Mélenchon refused to take part in the 3rd debate since it was only 3 days before the election.
That happens more than who cares, right? The debate stuff, who cares? Usually one debate signals a second debate sometime is worth it, but after the first 2 debates, there's nobody that's undecided at that point.
Instead, France 2, which was to hold the 3rd debate, decided to have a format in which each candidate would answer questions with journalists one-on-one. Most of those participating targeted Macron, who was now clearly the frontrunner. They also targeted the media, who they had charged with giving Macron extremely positive coverage, which was unfair to his opponents. However, in the middle of the program,
Does France have something similar to the United States where you have to give equal airtime?
terrorist attack took place on the famed Champs-Élysées, in which police officers were targeted. 1 police officer was killed and 3 people were wounded, one of which was a German tourist. As a result, a state of emergency was declared to protect the upcoming elections. This was the first presidential election held in France during a state of emergency.
Okay.
With this attack, many thought that this would help the National Front as well as possibly the Republicans. But because the campaign blackout 44 hours before the polls opened, there was very little that anyone could say on the topic. It was in this atmosphere that French voters went to the polls, with Emmanuel Macron winning 24% of the vote and
what's good, Anthrax?
Marine Le Pen with 21.3% of the vote, advancing to the second round. Both of these candidates,
So they're basically tied, you know.
performed worse than expected, but they were still expected to be the top two candidates. Surprisingly, Francois Fillon finished third with 20% of the vote, barely behind Le Pen. Had scandals not tarnished his reputation, or if the Republicans switched candidates, it's very possible that the Republicans could have finished second place or even first. Jean-Luc Mélenchon finished fourth with 19.6% of the vote, which was also just 1.7% shy of Le Pen's numbers. If Benoît Hamon, who finished fifth with 6.4% of the vote, had dropped out and supported Mélenchon, Mélenchon might have finished second place. There were so many what ifs in this first round of the election.
But there will be more rounds. I think, right? There's like 2 or 3 from what I've gathered so far. Because I have no idea about French politics, as I said at the beginning.
Going into the second round,
oh my God, Anthrax.
Which was only 2 weeks away, both Francois Fillon and Benoît Hamon endorsed Macron. Jean-Luc Mélenchon didn't indicate who he would vote for, instead saying that he would not vote for Le Pen. Most support around the country lined up around Macron, such as President Francois Hollande.
Interesting, given that history with them.
Macron even received the endorsement of former US President Barack Obama, and the polls reflected the support as well. In a head-to-head matchup, Macron barely dipped below 60% in the polls, with Le Pen rarely topping 40%. Because the campaign was only 2 weeks long, there wasn't a lot that happened. One PR blunder was when Macron visited a Whirlpool factory that was to close within the next year. While meeting with union representatives, Marine Le Pen had gone to the factory to meet with workers. When Macron arrived, he was booed by the crowd. But besides that, there were no other public relation blunders. As far as the debate between the two candidates, Macron was considered the winner by most in the media, with Le Pen being described as unprepared. The biggest thing that could have impacted the election was Macron leaks. Just a few hours before the blackout was...
Why does this always happen? WikiLeaks is like suspiciously always right before an election present.
Take place, over 20,000 hacked emails from Macron's campaign team was made public. Because these leaks were just hours before the blackout, Macron and his campaign could not respond to the leaking of the emails. The media was also prohibited from talking about the email leaks, as they too were bound by the blackout laws regarding the elections. However, these leaks were published on social media, especially on Twitter. Bots, most of them from the United States, continued to push the hashtag MacronLeaks. But once people started to look at the emails, there really wasn't anything of substance. Most of the emails discussed mundane campaign activities and personal correspondence.
So this was just like a propagandized like situation trying to hurt Macron.
After years of investigation, the French Foreign Ministry attributed the attacks to a group called APT-28, which is connected to the Russian GRU.
How similar is that to like the same sort of leaks that occurred in 2016 with the Hillary Clinton, which they connected to Russia as well?
Still, the leaked emails didn't cause a dent in support for Macron. In fact, his numbers increased. On election day for the second round, Macron won 66.1% of the vote to Le Pen's 33.9%.
That's not even close. Of course, I really don't know, because that could be very close in certain like districts. I don't know. So, that looks like,
according to a
landslide to
post-election
me.
Ipsos poll, Macron won nearly every group of voters by a large margin.
Okay.
The only group of voters he lost were trade workers, with Le Pen winning 56% of those workers. So why did Macron win? Of course, it's a mixture of things. According to political scientists Jocelyn Evans and Gilles Evaldi, there was a perfect storm. First, the radical parties in France had more influence. Of course, we have the National Front on the right, but we also have a number of leftist parties, including Jean-Luc Mélenchon's candidacy, which fragmented the left, taking radicals from the Socialist Party. But second, which is just as important, was having a viable centrist candidate. Macron was a viable centrist candidate in a time when both the right and the left were battling between each other.
So when you can't decide on which side of the equation you want to be on, stay in the middle. I gotcha.
As well as within their own parties. This is why Francois Bayrou, who came in third in 2017, could not make his centrist candidacy work because both the Republicans and the Socialists
They were centrist themselves in some capacity, is what you're going to say, right?
had insignificant challenges on their flanks. Once Marine Le Pen modernized the National Front, it was easily going to peel off voters from the Republicans. Once Jean-Luc Mélenchon formed La France Insoumise, he was going to take voters from the Socialists. As we had mentioned earlier, if the leftist vote had gotten behind either Mélenchon or Hamon, or Fillon's scandals didn't happen, then it's highly likely that Le Pen's party might not have finished second. And that's the 2017 presidential election, which saw the rise of a political newcomer, as well as the fall of two political giants, the Republicans and the Socialist Party. I want to thank you all very much.
This was a trip for me because, like I said, French politics I have really no idea about at all. So this was interesting in terms of like their part. It seems like interestingly similar to the British, but very different than the British system. Macron kind of rose from the ashes in 2012, from being an advisor to kind of like being a part of the presidency in some sort of fashion by, I guess, his cabinet, and then enhanced himself by kind of separating himself from that. Really an opportunist is what it seems like. I gotta be honest with you guys, I don't know much about Macron since 2017, so maybe there's something interesting to develop from here. So let me know down below what you guys think we should do next. I appreciate you guys as always. Peace out. Anthrax, what did you say? If we had pardoned Edward Snowden and Julian Assange, we wouldn't have to worry about them being Russian influenced. Julian Assange, wasn't he the creator and founder of WikiLeaks? And Edward Snowden, he was a whistleblower due to what had occurred with like the surveillance state, right? I don't know how much an influence they have on this, but I'm open to hearing. What are we watching next? I already have it chosen. I've had it chosen for 3.5 hours. It's a Jay and Mark video. It's the video we're ending this stream on. I've been streaming for, like I said, 3.5 hours. I should have been done by now, but the first hour was technical difficulties. So here we are. Yeah. Anything that wants to be said or asked before we press start? Yeah. But what would happen to the Republic? Would it survive? Wouldn't Caesar's assassination been inevitable, though? Oh, Leo Brick. Oh, got you, Anthrax. I have not ate lunch today, so that's why I'm snacking on chips. Okay. I'm going to count down. I think there's a stream delay, so I'm going to count down from 8:30, and then I'm going to start. But anything you want to say before that? Anthrax, you said about the alchemy video. I'll probably get to it. It's a longer video, and I said in our Discord that longer videos are usually harder. Because I have a lot of long videos that have already been recommended. So it's almost like in its own recommendation list. So it's harder. I would be able to do those better on Saturdays like today. However, I'm clearing up a bunch of videos that I already had requested. This last video that we're watching is actually one that I just picked because the first 5 videos we did 6 videos. This will be our 6th. The first 5 videos were requests that were in my watch later. And then this one, I don't know, just picked it. Sometimes I get a choice. But I'm going to count like another 20 seconds and then we'll get going on our final video. By the way, if you've never seen a Jay and Mark video, they're 2 funny guys. This is a little bit about geography and history from Britain. When we started the channel in 2024, this was one of the first few videos I watched, or channels I watched, and kind of just, and I got their book. So, yeah. It's really interesting, especially like maps. I like maps and stuff, so yeah. Okay. So we're going to get this last video done. Let's jump right in, shall we? Welcome back, everyone. I hope you're doing amazing. This is another Jay and Mark video, the world's most annoying road. I think this is a South American road based off the thumbnail. You know, I've never been down this road, so I don't have any particular bias, so we're going to have to hear them out. Glad you're here. Let's jump right in.
Today, we're talking about the longest road trip you can make in the...
That's odd. Halfway through your sentence, you were suddenly thwarted by the presence of a rainforest.
I know, you know what's funny? I actually know that reference right there. This is going to be a reference to the impassable part of this road in Colombia, if I'm not mistaken.
We're the men?
Thank you. Our story starts...
This video is only a minute and a half long.
Starts in 1889, when US Secretary of State and failed presidential candidate James G. Blaine, who looked remarkably like the actor Stephen.
James G. Blaine? Oh, yeah, this was the Secretary of State of Ulysses. Yeah, he didn't like, I don't think he liked Ulysses' cabinet. This guy was the Secretary of State for... Bruh, my brain is not working because I'm 3.5 hours in. He was Secretary of State for the second guy that got shot. Garfield.
Fry came up with an absolutely bonkers idea.
A railway squiggling more than 15,000 miles from the top of North America all the way to the bottom of South America.
That's very ambitious. I haven't seen something like this since in the 1880s, 1890s, where Britain tried to do that.
So if you lived in New York and you had to attend
in Africa
a business meeting in Buenos Aires, you could get there in just a few minutes.
Sounds pointless, but there was a good reason he wanted it built. James G. Blaine, who looked like Stephen Fry, was a strong proponent of Pan-Americanism, the notion that all nations on this continent have a shared destiny. The closer our nations work together...
Yeah, I don't think anyone thinks that now. Definitely not in the 20th century.
The safer, the more powerful, and the richer the United States will be. I mean, the richer we all will be.
Sadly for James G. Blaine, who looked a lot but sounded nothing like Stephen Fry...
Bro, they've said that like 4 times.
The idea never got further than the wouldn't this be nice stage of the planning process.
But a good idea was a good idea. It just needed one tweak. By the 1920s, motorcars have become an essential part of American life, thanks to leaps in technology and mass production. Everyone was going...
While chatting in the car park at the 5th International Conference of American States, the delegates realised that Stephen Fry's railroad would be much much more beneficial and much more achievable if it were a road instead.
No need to build the whole thing to one standard.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, railroad travel probably was declining at this time anyway.
No need to build it all in one go before it becomes useful.
Roads can go up steeper hills than trains.
Roads can go down steeper hills than trains.
Roads can bend round tighter corners than trains.
Roads connect to other roads, spreading the benefits further than trains.
And probably best of all, roads don't need train stations.
Or trains.
And so, Stephen
Roads do not need trains. That is so true.
Fry's Pan-American Railroad became the Pan-American Highway.
Mexico was the first country to complete their section in 1950.
So did you get like some sort of like benefit by, you know, being a part of this?
Followed by El Salvador.
Like some sort of like monetary benefit?
Salvador, Nicaragua, Peru, Argentina, Chile, until by 1974, there was a piece of Pan-American Highway in all.
Lovely, they literally separated the 74. They have only one bit that's not complete between Panama and Colombia.
14 countries on the route.
Fancy a fantastic cross-continental road trip?
I've got snacks.
I've got sickness bands.
And I've got Baby Shark. Do.
Let's go.
I thought they were literally going to do that because I wouldn't put it past them. If you ever watch their GeoGuessr videos, literally the only videos we haven't reacted to, they would do that.
The Pan-American Highway isn't one signposted road with one name, but more like a theoretical potential route which no one is realistically expected to complete from start to finish. A bit like the South Circular Road in South London.
I'm sure there's some definite extremists that have done this though.
Which makes it a different type of road in every territory. In Alaska, it's a rugged, dusty permafrost for ice road truckers.
In Canada, it's an asphalt single carriageway winding through wild, mountainous forest.
In the
USA does have trains. I think that's something that's interesting. Anthrax just pointed out in our live chat. I think that's one thing that Europe has done so much better than the United States is their public transportation. Specifically, I think that there is, you know, I think we'll eventually get to that point, but there's a lot of issues with you know, combating different, you know, there's just so many things that block that dream for us.
Bit of the USA that isn't Alaska, it's every highway in the USA.
What?
The USA never officially designated a specific road as the Pan Am. Instead, in 1966, the US government declared that their section of the route was the entire interstate highway system.
That's just to bolster and advertise our interstate highway system.
They did this to avoid favouring any particular states or cities and to make it look like literally any improvement to their
I mean, that is true. Like, you could literally start from Maine and get there.
Domestic road network was doing the entire Americas a favour.
It also means the USA technically contains the longest section of the route.
Our journey takes us through Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador.
I love how they just do not care.
Honduras, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Panama.
Gasp, what about the Panama Canal?
Don't worry, it's only 50 meters wide. There's a bridge. But then...
This is where it stops.
Where's the road gone?
It's just stopped.
Is this the southern tip of Argentina?
No, we've still got loads of countries to go.
Well, where are we?
The Az.
Your Visa Panama.
Oh. Should we go back then?
Yes, let's go back.
Yeah, this is the interesting part. I'm glad that they're going to tackle.
Well, that's a shame. I was really looking forward to my business meeting in Buenos Aires.
So the Pan-American Highway is incomplete, and the only missing section on the entire route,
I wonder if they'll ever tackle this,
is arguably the most important one. On the knobbly bit of land connecting North and South America is a gap of about 60 miles, roughly the same as London to Brighton, where there are no roads at all.
Many successive governments have tried over the last few decades to plug the gap and complete the road in the 1970s, 1990s and 2000s, but have never managed it.
Which begs the obvious question.
Why is Pingu's house so much bigger on the inside?
What?
Why has this last tiny section never been finished?
People often ask me, what's the secret to your confident smile? And I always tell them the same thing. There is no secret. I just use Surfshark VPN.
What a relative video.
The sponsor of this video.
At first, I thought it was too good to be true.
swear.
True. But then I tried Surfshark VPN for myself, and I haven't stopped smiling since.
9 out of 10 dentists recommend Surfshark VPN.
Bro, like I said, they just don't care.
An app and browser extension that uses a secret formula to encrypt your data and online activity, protecting you when using public Wi-Fi or sending and receiving files. It also allows you to virtually change your location, letting you access overseas streaming services, as well as shopping discounts not available in your country on an unlimited number of devices.
For
That
me,
shopping discount's interesting.
the results have been truly amazing. I feel like a new person.
Okay.
In a different country.
Simply click the link surfshark.com/mapmen in the description and use the code MAPMEN at checkout to get an extra 4 months for free.
So if you're looking to regain that confident look, I say try Surfshark VPN.
Yeah, their mouths aren't even matching up with the audio. It's so good.
It's so good.
It's so good.
It makes me happy.
I just can't wipe the smile off my face.
This is what it's come to. This is what this stream has come to.
Surfshark VPN.
I'm sure that they're running this ad nationwide. Surfshark is. W. One of the only channels we actually watch the ads for.
The Pan-American Highway has been in a state of infuriating unfinished limbo for more than 50 years.
North and South America, despite sharing a land border, still behave like two totally unconnected continents.
And it's all because of this. The area straddling the border between Panama and Colombia, where the two halves of the Pan-American Highway almost meet, is known as the Darien.
Darien?
Yeah.
Darien.
And it just happens.
The Darien Gap. It's also interesting because Colombia used to own this land.
Very inconveniently, to be the world's deadliest jungle, with mountainous terrain,
thick rainforest,
deep swamps,
torrential rain,
frequent landslides,
searing temperatures,
extreme humidity,
hidden rivers that swell and flood,
poisonous insects,
poisonous frogs,
poisonous snakes,
carnivorous jaguars,
and carnivorous mosquitoes carrying carnivorous diseases.
Sounds like paradise.
It's one of the most inhospitable environments on Earth.
A place where everything about...
Can you imagine you have to go there because you guessed that GeoGuessr-wise?
...the landscape is actively discouraging the presence of any human beings.
It's worse than Milton Keynes.
Because of the nuisance it's caused preventing the completion of the Pan-American Highway, the region has become known as the Darien Gap.
But despite the lack of any roads, some people, probably compelled by the geographical taunt of the massive highways on either side, have tried to drive across it anyway. In 1960, Richard Bevier from Britain and Terence John Whitfield from Australia became the first people ever to cross the Darien Gap in a vehicle, with a sturdy all-terrain car, hand winches and makeshift bridges to overcome relentless mud and mountainous ravines.
That's pretty impressive.
It took them just 136 days to complete the journey.
Jeez.
With an impressive average speed of half a mile per day.
But apart from the inevitable attention-seeking record breakers, the deadly journey across the Darien Gap is also made, much more regularly and much more seriously,
by hikers.
On foot, by millions of refugees.
People fleeing conflict in Venezuela, Haiti and several other countries.
That makes it even more dangerous too, because there could be bandits there. Bandits trying to pick off refugees because of their vulnerability.
Travel to Colombia to continue their perilous journey across the Darien Gap. Because
there's probably roads then. You know, there have to be footpaths, and those footpaths become roads.
The best chance of making it to the promise of a better life in the United States.
In 2023 alone, 500,000 people attempted the dangerous crossing. Hundreds of them never came out alive.
This doesn't seem right. If humankind can build the Channel Tunnel or the bridge to Hong Kong or the Panama Canal or this thing, surely it can find a way to build 60 miles of road.
The thing is, it's not a question of if humankind can. It's not that it can't, because it probably could. It's a question of whether humankind, even if it could, which it probably can't, whether it would, because it turns out, while it probably can, it won't. There are a great
political disputes, right?
Deal of people who don't want a road connection between Colombia and Panama, including
the United
Panama.
States. Oh, I was going to say the United States for the former.
Panama used to be a part of Colombia. It fought hard for its independence in 1903 and was only able to keep it because the Darien Gap stopped the Colombian army from ever being able to easily take it back.
And the CIA in the United States helped.
Cows. In the 1950s, the governments of countries across North America took careful steps to make sure their livestock were free of foot and mouth disease. But South America didn't, meaning that the Darien Gap acts as a natural barrier to stop infected cows from moving north and destroying the livestock industries of Mexico and the United States.
The locals. The Darien is home to more than 40,000 indigenous people who have long opposed the road, fearing it would bring slash-and-burn agriculture and spontaneous colonisation, destroying their way of life, not to mention all the biodiversity.
And most of all, perhaps surprisingly, given it was their idea in the first place, the USA! For a long time, the Darien jungle has been a perfect hiding spot for cartels smuggling
literally what I was saying.
Drugs into the USA.
American politicians, worried about keeping drugs out of their country, think that a paved road would create a super highway for some of the world's most dangerous criminals, who incidentally are some of...
I mean, obviously this is the stupidest reason ever, because you would be able to actually have better transparency of this region if it was monitored and it had a highway.
The nicest people you'll ever meet, and I have not a bad word to say about them.
Today, the Pan-American Highway has a somewhat unearned legendary status. It shows up on Google as the longest road in the world.
Despite the fact that it's actually two entirely unconnected roads, and Pan-American is the very thing it isn't.
Does this mean that Stephen Fry's Pan-American Highway was a complete failure?
Not necessarily. The purpose of the highway wasn't just to make it possible to go from top to bottom or complete an impressive record. It was to bring countries together and
Pan-Americanism.
Create economic benefits, and for the vast majority of the route, that's exactly what it does.
Immensely satisfying though it would be to finally finish the road, the practical reality is, when it comes to moving large amounts of goods a large amount of distance, shipping is cheaper.
And when it comes to moving human people for holidays or business meetings, flying is easier.
And so, the missing road link across the Darien Gap will almost definitely probably never be built.
Like having a monkey.
Yeah, you'd have to get some sort of change with like Panama and Colombia, I guess, and then with the help of America.
Butler, the cons outweigh the pros.
In conclusion, I don't know, what are we saying? Is it a good thing or a bad thing that you can't drive from North to South America?
Well, there doesn't have to be just one answer, does there?
You do good things, I'll do bad.
It's probably a net bad thing.
Okay.
In a world where nations should be breaking down borders, building bridges,
Y'all couldn't have said it differently.
and working ever closer together, it feels icky to be celebrating countries that have chosen to physically close themselves off from each other. But
oh my gosh.
One thing we can agree on is it's really annoying. Oh, not again.
Father?
Yes, son?
What's for supper, Father?
Nothing, son.
But I'm hungry, Father.
Me too, son. But there's no money left.
Why not, Father?
I went to patreon.com/mapmen and signed up to their basic outline tier, so I get to see brand new episodes of Map Men before anyone else.
But that's only £2 a month, Father.
But it wasn't enough for me, son. So I upgraded to the small legend tier to get my name in the credits and access to disc one of their DVD extras, including outtakes and deleted scenes.
But that's only £5 a month, Father.
Yes, and frankly it was a bargain. But it still wasn't enough for me, so I upgraded to their high-resolution vector tier to get access to DVD extras disc 2, including director's commentary on every episode, early versions and storyboards, and a chance to send in questions, plus my name in the credits in an even bigger font, all for £10 a month.
I understand. Well, I suppose we'll have to go hungry then, Father.
I'm afraid so, son. Luckily, we've got just enough money to pay for your very important medicine.
But Father, what about the very top tier?
You mean the geography teacher tier? The one where for £30 a month you get your name in the credits in an absolutely massive font, a signed printed map and a dedicated thank you video from Jay and Steve.
Jay and Mark.
Whatever their names are. But it's the exact cost of your monthly medicine, without which you definitely die.
Don't worry about that, Father. As long as we're supporting Map Men, allowing them to make
this is so perfectly unhinged.
More episodes of a higher quality and getting unfettered access to all the best behind the scenes and exclusive extra content, that's really all that matters.
Thank you for understanding, son.
I love you, Father.
I love you too, son.
Okay, W video. That's all we got. I appreciate you guys as always. Until next time, peace out. All right, and that's it. That's the end of the stream. I really do appreciate all you guys' support. This is about a 4-hour long stream. Did not think it was going to happen after the first bit of technical difficulty, but appreciate you guys as always. Make sure you, do all the things.